Okay, I think we can slowly get moving here. So first of all, thank you for joining us at this session titled Empowering and Enabling Market Development on Clean Cooking in Asia Pacific. I am not Tamajit Chatterjee from Sustainable Energy for All. My name is Ben Hartley. I am a principal I work on energy efficiency and cooling as a principal specialist at SE for All. Tamajit was unfortunately unwell, and I was also planning to attend ASEF on behalf of SE for All, and will be stepping in for Tamajit today. And he sends his dear regrets. He's feeling very unwell. He's in Jakarta now. I know he was looking forward to this a lot, and he's unhappy not to be here. So I would also just ask, that you bear with me during today's session, I hope to go through the material well. I think we're looking forward to a very constructive session, talking about sort of the clean cooking challenge as well as from our side. Very good. The opportunities associated with integrated energy planning. So I think, we're very happy to be partnered with the Asian Development Bank to deliver this session. We've worked together in the past on sessions at ASEF and are looking forward to more close collaboration with the ADB and with other sort of regional organizations such as SCAP as well. And we're also very happy to be partnering on this session with Modern Energy Cooking Services, MECS, SCAP of course, and the UN Capital Development Fund. So the overall theme, essentially how can we support the creation of the enabling environment around clean cooking, and using IEP as a tool to support the enabling environment. The agenda roughly will be divided into 3 parts. We'll have an opening, including remarks from Hongpeng Liu, Director Energy Division at UNESCAP, and Dr. Nam, Principal Energy Economist at ADB. The second part will be deep dive country presentations. We'll have a series of presentations before the break and then a few more after. And then finally, the final session will be financing to reach scale. So we're not quite at this presentation yet, if that's okay. At this stage, I would like to welcome to the lectern Mr. Hongpeng Liu, who is the Director, Energy Division for UNESCAP. And please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ben. Good morning, distinguished participants. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this clean cooking session. I think this is a very important area we discussed today. As I mentioned yesterday at the plenary panel discussion, in Asia Pacific, we still have 1.2 billion populations, which is about 1/4 of this population without access to clean cooking fuels. And according to the current development trends, if we go along this by 2030, we will not achieve our target for universal access to modern energy services. So I really think this is a very important meeting, and also I look forward to hearing from your views and comments and your initiatives, and to see how we can just work together to move forward, support the clean cooking initiatives and the projects, activities in this region. So on behalf of United Nations Economic and Social Commission, let me just welcome all of you to this event on empowering and enabling market development on clean cooking in the Asia Pacific. This is part of ASEF. Dr. Nam, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I always think this is one of the well-established and also influential event for energy in Asia and Pacific. In particular, through this platform, you can access a lot of private sector. I know the clean cooking part is not in favor of private sector, but I see there's gradually, attention from private sector how to support this area. And I want also to thank SE4 to have this opportunity jointly organize this as a partnership. It's very encouraging to see the lineup of distinguished speakers this morning from different countries in this region. and share with us innovative approaches to tackling and the challenges of clean cooking. And we can also look forward to a series of really informative discussion. I think the experiences from a country, it's really very practical and useful, and it's replicable, in many of these occasions. As you may know, the principal focus from SCAP side on energy, it's mainly to support member states to achieve SDG 7. This clean cooking is the most important part. For mostly, people when people talk about SDG 7, it's neglected, or talk less for this clean cooking. But it's understandable. Renewable energy, you always have a large-scale project. You have investment. You have you see the tangible outcomes. But in many of these occasions, this clean cooking is community-based, individual household, compared to this kind of renewables and even energy efficiency project. It's quite difficult to attract, investors. And when we disaggregated the urban and the rural kind of development for clean cooking, we see mostly, in our impression, in our concept, mostly rural communities. Probably it's the key area, the target for clean cooking. But based on our study, we found that, in the urban areas, actually gaining access to clean cooking has been realized in rural areas more progress than in urban areas. So we need to understand the context of the challenges in all settings, including obstacles facing clean cooking in urban areas. If you look at the studies, probably most of the studies more focused on rural communities, in rural areas. But in the urban areas in developing countries, this is also even much more challenging, or even stalled for last decade. There's not much progress. At the outside, I think it's very important to state that clean cooking represents a series of policy changes, policy challenges. We really need to address these kind of challenges. First of all, it suffers from a lack of visibility. As I said, those people who bear the consequences of using polluting cooking technologies and fuels are hidden, often in remote areas without access to engagement in public discourse. Those suffering from these polluting fuels and the technologies may not find a voice which can be heard from the policymakers at the government level, especially in the central government level. Then there's also physical challenges. As I said, investment, in particular from a private sector, is really a big challenge for these areas, this lack of visible business models. So that's also, I think, today's event, we want to hear if there's any good models, business models, which is practical, feasible to just replicate. One way to think about the solutions for clean cooking is that, triangles with three concerns. So I think three corners, and one corner is a policy commitment, the political commitment from the government side. The second one is finance, and the third one is technology. So we always say these are the triangles we have to think about when we deliver clean cooking like a project or technology. We need to drive progress in all these three corners of this triangle to achieve a unified and a comprehensive scale up of clean cooking. We need to raise awareness and build a policy commitment. And we need to mobilize finance, which is appropriate to the needs of the sector. And lastly, we really need to embrace the better technologies, and particularly electric cooking and the digitalization of the clean cooking sector, while recognizing the existing cooking culture and custom. I think clean cooking technology is quite different with the other technologies for energy sector. You really need not only think about how you supply the services, you have to think about how you adjust with the local cooking culture, and also to adapt this kind of technology with the existing customer probably it's last over 1,000 years already. And when I first heard the Max, I had a discussion with Professor Brown, a few years ago. I heard, he told me the technology he used in Africa is a solar home system. My first impression is solar home system is only for lighting. Well, how can you use it for cooking? But he explained to me, I found that technology now is much, much more reliable and practical and economically feasible. I really think this, and the good thing is that he also showed me the menu, and they prepared the recipe for the local food, how you cook a local food with this new technology. I really think that is a great way, to promote this kind of scale up this kind of new technology. So ESCAP has been working consistently across many of these areas, from policy side and the finance and also the technology part. And with the help of many of you in this room, and we have raised awareness at the policy level and promoted the intergovernmental dialogue at our regional energy platform. We are working with our colleagues in the government of Bhutan on a pilot project to scale up clean cooking using electric cook stoves. So you will hear more from the project itself today. And I also thank Dr. Nam for your support, and also from SE4 and from Max. This is really a joint effort to start a pilot in the country, and we want to scale up this kind of effort. And encouraging development in recent years is the proliferation of electric cooking technologies. So these devices can be, infrared or induction, offering high efficiency, zero emissions if the electricity generated from renewables. And also often with advanced data gathering capabilities for this kind of a device. This offers an opportunity for clean cooking solutions to respond to the 3Ds of energy transition: decentralization, decarbonization, and digitalization. It's clear that many countries in this region, with the high shares of renewable energy, can transition their cooking sector to renewable energy using electrification. These benefits of this do not stop with serving the population who currently do not have access to electricity, to power grid. So the decentralized renewable energy solutions will provide these possibilities. And the benefits of electric cooking can extend across the entire population through this kind of technology, driving gains in energy efficiency and renewable energy. That's an important part, the target of SDG 7. So digitalization is also to solving so many SDG challenges. And the benefits of digitalization, clean cooking are becoming clearer with each passing year. So the more information we have about how people cook, where they cook, and how much energy they use will be useful for many applications, from grid planning to load forecasting and device design, even for the decentralized system. But importantly, it can open up new business models and incorporate pay-as-you-go technologies and unlock this carbon financing because of the high levels of confidence it gives in the attribution of carbon savings. So that's a digitalization play a role. You can easily get the carbon credit from this data. This is a very exciting future for all of us in the sector. I believe we should recommit ourselves and to the target of reaching 100% clean cooking by the end of this decade. So that means if we scale up this kind of technology and also this kind of initiatives, I think we have the possibility to achieve 100% of clean cooking by 2030. So that is our target. With all the efforts, it's possible. So with this thought, I look forward to hearing the perspectives and the experiences from all of you. And during this discussion, and let's work together to make these goals possible and to achieve universal clean cooking services by end of the 2030. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Welcome you all for coming over here in this deep dive workshop. And then this is the kind of Director Hong Peng was mentioning that we would like to include this cooking. Sustainable cooling as well as cooking, because we see it very much of the issue in the energy access perspective in the ADB policy as well. And then this is part of it is explicitly mentioned in the energy policy, which was approved, new energy policy in the ADB 2021, that we included that energy access as one of the big issues. Why this was not so much of the investment in terms of financing, Director Hong Peng was mentioning, is because it's not easy as to come up with the investment portfolio from the operation department. But I see much of the changes will occur if this by end of this month, in fact, in a couple of weeks, and then I think at 1st of July, then ADB will have the norm, so to say, new operation model where energy sector with the knowledge department as well as the operation department be together into the one energy kind of a department, energy sector. So there will be certain things that we do. Certainly, we are looking at all this energy security in with the 7 operation priority of the ADB, with the strategy 2030. Certainly, that it covers all the energy, but in particularly, we're looking at from the poverty alleviation, all these different operations. That there is certainly the role to play in addition to this SDG goal 7, so to say, and the energy access. In the energy access, over the past couple of decades, that ADB energy sector group, we were working on the energy security, mostly in the also energy access in terms of the electricity, so to say, but we were lagging far behind in terms of the energy cooling and heating, as well as, and then even worse in case of the cooking, cooking access, because, and then we'll see how much that we can really put our efforts to come up with energy access, because it was all different, figures, but what we see it is using the International Energy Agency, we might use the UNESCO figure, but we still see that 1.5 billion without modern access to the modern clean fuel for, so to say, for the cooking in Asia and the Pacific. And based on the IEA's estimates that we see that, if it goes, even if it with a little expediting the promoting a little bit of this, energy access, so to say, in the cooking space, then, still by year 2030, 21% will still remain without access for the clean cooking solutions. So, this is the quite alarming. It's one side of the energy access perspective, but this is not only the access perspective that we have to look at, especially when it comes to the cooking, clean cooking solutions, because that has that has also other impacts, in particular from the indoor air pollutions, all these kind of things that. So it is not and then also gender equity, in addition to the climate air quality aspects. So it is not only the SDG goal 7, but it will also have the, that will clean energy solutions, so to say, will have the also, positive contribution to the SDG 3, SDG goal 3, so to say, healthy lives and well-being for all, as well as the, obviously SDG 13 in terms of climate change. So, if we look at the impact of, that's the area that we wanted to see initially from the ADB side, is more on the health alone, that, how that will have, impacts on this, if we don't so to say, transit to the clean cooking solutions, then, which is mostly caused by this incomplete combustion of the fuel, solid or liquid fuels, that gives the, in the cooking. So, it's, that is the main area that we should not really overlook from the, that aspects. Because according to WHO reports that, 3.2 million people die prematurely from the illness attributed to the household air pollution, so to say, and the most of them are coming from this, as a result of the traditional or fossil fuel-based cooking system, so to say. And obviously, in order to change it, why we are changing to clean cooking is, I think, the Director Hong Peng was also mentioning that. It is that we have to look at also the economic aspects of that. It's not financial cost aspects that we are only looking at, but we have to look at the opportunity cost of all this, which is we have to deal with the economic cost. So that if we add up the whole thing, that then it will have a great economic efficient, so to say, through the transition of the traditional cooking method to the modern cooking method. So like in case of the Philippines and the data which says in 2019, which is quite outdated, but still, we couldn't find the most update one in case of the Philippines, was still, 10, 11, almost 12% of GDP. That is that, these are the economic costs you attributed to the pollution, which is, estimated roughly 44.8 billion US dollars. So this is about 12% of that one. So in the, that is the, how we see that clean cooking solution will also contribute very much on the health aspects as well. So, in the spaces that we see, we've been doing this dissemination activities and knowledge sharing events, and not only in the ADB throughout this, last year I think we had it also, ASAF, and then, but also some other, other venues that we go there, and then we are trying to come up with some of this awareness building of this importance, important aspects that we do. And that, some of that, we would like to see that. And then also, given that, we've been doing some of this assessment, but the thing is then, we come up to the, some of the findings that the e-cooking is to one of the solution that, which is mostly efficient as well as safe. That's why we all try to move towards the more on the e-cooking. And then another assumption there is that it's not an assumption. The fact is that pretty much in the Asia and the Pacific, they are very quite, in terms of electricity access, they do have it. It's just a matter of, how we can really introduce that kind of, changing that. But obviously, it should not be only the device itself, but it has to be, we have to take a little bit of more holistic approach than that one. Because, like Director Hong Peng was mentioning, in the rural areas or decentralized or distributed renewable energy system, nevertheless, that, we still need to think about the, grid system. It is a standalone grid, but also, we have to take it into the, big consideration of the renewable energy is, it is intermittent energy. So there should be a storage. So, and then also it goes in, if it goes very much in terms of energy consumption aspects, then, we have to also look at it into the grid penetration of the renewable as well as the frequency and everything. So it should be taken as a holistic, not just the providing the device itself. It will not. We have it also experienced in various places, which is also similar to the sustainable cooling as well. But, when we try to do that, and then another important thing, which he was, Director Hong Peng was mentioning about this, the challenges that, in terms of institutional setup, framework, financing aspects, all this. But one of the barriers that we would like to learn from the experience of best practice is that the preferences from the consumer side. How this could be done. Now, I know that even if, in the OECD and the developed countries, they're using cooking, and then they are using some kind of gas or some of this liquid where they can have the flavor of the smoke. So that, it tastes like. But the thing is, it's very hard to bring them to the, local people or in the rural area. And then also the cost is, so this kind of a preference. And then we did some study, and then you can share that, which we did a couple of years back. That was the case study that we have conducted in the Philippines. And then it still didn't work in that direction of the switching to the modern cooking stoves. Is it because of their tradition and their food style? Most of them are grilled. Same thing, we'll face similar questions in the Central West countries as well. Their major food is grilled and charcoal grilled. So this, how we can move up on this preference to the certain extent. That needs to be also, throughout this workshop, that we would like to learn also, what are the, technology itself is, how much the innovation has taken place, how much widely used. This is good to know and then good to share. But from ADB perspective, which we are going ahead, as another pilot projects now in one of the EMC countries, that we would like to go with what are the business model that we can do. Some of these countries, in particular in Mongolia, it is very cooking is that we cannot look at the cooking itself as standalone. Because in the Gare district, where you have this access issues, but they are using all this stove, it is a heating stove, and then in between that you're using cooking as well. So in there, then it means that there is one electric cooking stove or induction. But on the other side, that will not solve their issue, because in addition to that, they still need a heating stove. So, so there are some areas, some country-specific aspects that how this will be. So we'll try to pilot testing what will be the best business model that we can bring it up. One of the business model is using the private sector. Also, tap the private sector's investment, but they come, and the most important thing is the operation and maintenance of, so sustainability of any type of the investment project in the clean cooking. Because, how are you gonna do it, So, the prices of devices, the cost, that you can do it much easier. It is not costly that much. The only thing is the sustainability of maintaining the e-cooking system in those areas in a specific country will be the main, one of the main challenges that we have to face that. So we would like to come there. And one of the area that we see is also kind of, carbon credit offsetting, which not, we know that almost all the countries in the ADB DMCs, they don't have now the carbon price mechanism. There is no carbon market. So, but the thing is that there are some countries that even using private sectors, they are offsetting the carbon credit. So that might be the one of the area that we can also include it in the cooking or even the sustainable cooling aspects on that one. So we have done, ADB has done over the past few years that we did some studies in the PRC as well as Mongolia. Some of this assess the technology option, what will be the best technology option in the different regions and or countries, and how we can really replace the biomass and then charcoal or coal to mitigate indoor pollutions. And it is also very difficult. And then also we have conducted some pilot study, in the Philippines, as I mentioned, that we came out with all these different types of. We had a kind of, technical as well as a socioeconomic assessment of the different types of the technologies, in the cooking technologies, that we wanted to see it. But the thing is that, there are some countries that still biomass is. Director Hong Peng knows much better in that sense, because there are still 20-30, at least 20-30% is so to say uncommercial fuel, which they don't get it, they don't pay. So of course that leads to the other aspects, but the thing is this for the, individuals in the rural area or remote areas, their fuel cost is zero. So whatever you bring, any type of the different innovative technology per se, then it is all costly anyway, from their perspective. So, how we can treat that one also, that is one of the issue. But we looked at very much on the, how we can do the health aspects on the indoor air pollutions, with that one. So, having said that, Dr. Hongpeng Liu was mentioning, and also I know that there is one presentation in Bhutan regarding the induction or e-cooking solutions or something. We have discussed that, and then we'll jointly with the UNSCAP, as well as SE for All, to conduct some of this pilot projects. It is not standalone pilot project, that there was some feasibility study, demand analysis, and everything was conducted already. And then we can just come out to see really how we can implement to bring it in. Some of these devices in Bhutan, or we still need to discuss with Director Hongpeng and how we can also ADB jointly with UNSCAP as well as SE4 to come out with this pilot project in the South Asia, on the that area. Okay, so and then also, I know that it is very welcome from our side, and then from the ADB, we'll learn very much from the your presentation and during the course of this deep dive workshop, several snapshots of your case studies from your market in the cooking industries, as well as also business model that you have adopted from that part. It was really we will learn very much on that one. And also, we would like to also learn a little bit about the SE Falls developed, so to say, kind of the evidence-based decision-making tool. I was, hearing about that one, but it is, I think this is not specific to the cooking itself, but it is overall, I know that energy access planning tool, which we find that this is very important as well from the, aspects from the sustainable cooling or sustainable or this clean cooking, because we look at from the energy access perspective. Because one of the area that we are looking at due to this NDC target, which is the little broad, to commitment of this carbon neutrality or net zero, target in a commitment of the DMC official development member countries by mid-century. So, we think that it requires that they needed some kind of, capacity building on the revisiting, so to say, their national energy plan, as well as their strategies. So we are coming out with, we just conducted one capacity building for the Southeast Asian countries together with the International Atomic Energy Agency. And we are heading to, cover some Central West countries, in this year, that we would like to do the integrated energy system planning. So we think that the planning is coming up now. So, so we have ADB is devoted to do the capacity building on the several different types of the energy system planning, or even the, this SE for all developed some of this energy access planning tools that, if it is, then we will like to also contribute, and then we can bring it to the capacity building of the DMC as well. So given all this, I hope the workshop, we hope the workshop will be a very fruitful venue. And so, to discuss on the various opportunity for action in the clean cooking space, and also learn and discuss, whatever that we could, and make this workshop successful. With that, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nam, and thank you very much, Mr. Liu, for your opening remarks. It's encouraging to hear, Mr. Liu, your perspective on e-cooking in particular, and Dr. Nam, thanks for sort of pointing us in the right direction for the rest of the session, because I think we will be talking a fair amount about finance. and linking to carbon markets in particular. And as part of the next presentation, which is the one that is listed as Tamojet on the system, I'm going to talk a little bit about SE4All's approach to integrated energy planning, which Dr. Nam was sort of just referencing. I think we're running a little bit behind, so I will try to go very quickly and give advance warning to our speakers on the next half that we can try and limit our presentations to about 10 minutes, and I will try to lead the way on that, if that sounds good. So I think, just to begin, again, I am not Tamojet, I'm Ben Hartley, I'm stepping in for Tamojet, who wishes he could be here but is feeling not super well. We're going to start by reviewing very quickly the data. I think we've heard a little bit about this. We sort of know the high-level figures. So I'm not going to dwell on this too much. But essentially, we know that there are about 2.3 billion people in the world without access to clean fuels and technologies for cooking. I will say these are the SDG 7 data custodian numbers. And we know that by volume, the number of people is higher in Asia than it is in Africa. But that there is probably a greater sort of issue among the proportion of the population in Africa. There are 20 countries that account for 78% of the access to clean cooking challenge, and all of them are in Asia and Africa. The number of people without access to clean fuels and technologies decreased slightly from 3 billion in 2010 to 2.3 billion in 2021. Now, again, according to the data custodian numbers, the trend that they have seen is that if this continues, their estimate is, if current trends continue, the estimate is that 1.9 billion will still be without access to clean cooking in 2030. So I'll just flip to the next one. You can see in Africa, population growth has outmatched gains in population with access to clean cooking, while in Asia, progress has been made despite population growth. So I think you're seeing sort of two stories in Asia and Africa. One in Africa where, obviously the challenge is outstripping population growth, and in Asia where there is more progress being made more rapidly, which is a very good sign. Now, to flip ahead to the next part of the presentation, I want to talk a little bit about advancements in the sector, and particularly on the policy side. There are, for those of you who don't know, the regulatory indicators for sustainable development are done by the World Bank ESMAP team with other partners. And what we can see, and these measure sort of policy progress, what we can see is that, is essentially that clean cooking planning is lagging behind electrification with a lower average RISE score. So you can see here, clean cooking planning score 54 in sub-Saharan Africa, electrification planning 74. In Asia, clean cooking planning 58, electrification planning 81. So if you're not familiar with the RISE indicators, I would certainly suggest that you have a look at them because they're a very good sort of indice for those in the energy planning community. And it's actually sort of an incredibly useful database. I think a couple notes, on average, South Asian countries are leading on policy and regulatory frameworks for clean cooking, but only India among them scores in what the RISE indicators determine the green zone. In 3 out of the 4 access deficit regions, East Asia and Pacific, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa, RISE scores vary very widely from 0 to 79. And I guess the suggestion here is that improved planning is useful, but of course is not sufficient to drive change on the ground. So with that, I want to flip over to SE4All's integrated energy planning approach. This is something that we've been working on, I think, since about 2020, and is a sort of, I think, new for SE4All, but a novel way of approaching the topic. And of course, we know that with less than 8 years to achieve SDG 7, governments need to know where to focus, funders need to know which solutions to support, and solution providers need to understand which communities to target. Part of the challenge is also that decision makers often lack the data and the tools necessary to answer these questions in an accurate, coordinated, and timely manner. So what is an IEP? Integrated energy plan, it uses information technology, digital tools, satellite imagery, and machine learning to give policymakers an easier, relatively low cost, and visually powerful way of identifying the optimal mix of technologies to achieve universal energy access. So by that we mean access to electricity, we mean clean cooking, and we also mean cooling, because cooling has been incorporated into our IEP planning as well. Fundamentally, it also facilitates problem solving. And you can see a little bit of sort of what the, when done correctly, integrated energy planning can do X, Y, and Z up on the slide. Our approach at SE for All, it seeks to accelerate the adoption of best-in-class IEPs in energy access deficit countries. We do this in two ways. We do this by doing them ourselves in countries where we can work, and by advocating for others to follow that lead and deliver IEPs that work to a best-in-class standard. So I think I can go quickly through this, but I've given you an indication here that electricity access is a main component, but as is clean cooking. Clean cooking is sort of an integral part of the work that we do in IEP, and we can also add cooling and cold chain components into them if we want to. Capabilities, least cost technology mix to electrify households and social infrastructure, integrating electrification, medical and agricultural cold chains, and access to cooking analyses with geospatial components so you can understand where, associated costs, budget implications, and prioritization for each site and technology type. The opportunities, holistic approach to planning, and the efficient and effective implementation of energy interventions by unlocking access to finance. It's a very important part of the work that we do. The process that we undertake is multi-step. It begins with defining a base layer for the analysis, including identification of settlements with limited access to clean cooking, estimating household cooking energy consumption, followed by estimating the opportunity for expansion of clean cooking solutions, and defining the infrastructure required the infrastructure required to realize that opportunity. I'm going through quickly here because we have an interesting video to show you, but this is a very quick landscape of where we have done integrated energy access planning with Rwanda and Madagascar ongoing currently. It's open access. This is one of the most important features of IEP, is that it's a tool that's for governments, but it's available on the web. And anyone can use it by registering, and in that sense we want to make it very useful, in particular for private sector operators who may come into a country and understand what the market looks like. Here we go. So hopefully this video works. I think I will give it a, oh, there we go.
As a private sector clean cooking solution provider, the Malawi Integrated Energy Planning Tool allows you to identify potential areas to expand your services. In this scenario, various indicators like LPG ownership, e-cooking ownership, biogas ownership, and more in 2030 helps you to visualize the expansion opportunity and the technologies available for expansion in the top 5 electrified communities in Blantyre. In another instance, if you're a cook stove entrepreneur looking to attract carbon financing in Malawi, you can use the Malawi Integrated Energy Planning Tool to understand the top 5 locations for improved portable firewood cook stoves in the country.
Okay, very good technology success. So I'll wrap up now just very quickly by giving you a sense of sort of the key ingredients to success from planning to implementation. And I think the point is, while IEPs can improve the enabling environment, the next step is to raise finance and bring in partners to implement the plan. So the IEP aims to deliver on the data-driven insights. but we also need sectoral buy-in, a regulatory environment, a strong regulatory environment, private sector participation, sustained capacity development, and key partners coming together, which I think is part of what ASEF and other forums are about. So I would invite you as well to go see it for yourself, sdg7energyplanning.org. You can see the integrated energy planning tools for Nigeria and Malawi, and Rwanda and Madagascar are currently under development. I would just finish by saying that you can direct any questions and inquiries to iep@seforall.org, and to go, you can check it out using the QR code there as well. But I would just say as well that in the work that we're undertaking on IEP, the point is very much to provide the data that can deliver the investment. And we think about this not only from an electricity access perspective. Clean cooking is integral. I think in our current work in Madagascar, actually developing an IEP, we've already seen some investment be committed to the clean cooking sector that will come in on the back of the IEP, which is a very encouraging development, and that is the point of the work. We're also, as Dr. Nam mentioned, expanding to include not just medical cold chains, but agricultural cold chains, and the potential that can be realized from sort of boosting your agricultural cold chain for the sector. So a very complete picture that we want to create with these IEPs, with clean cooking sort of being a very integral and central component of them. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. And we're going to now move on to the country deep dive section of the session. So we'll hear from country experts and for their presentations of about 10 minutes, if that's okay. And after you're done, I would just invite you to sit at the front of the stage. So first, I'd like to welcome Grace Janitza, hoping I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, who's a consultant with the Asian Development Bank, to present on increasing access to clean cooking, challenges and prospects from the Philippines. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ben. Good morning, everyone. I'm privileged to be able to present to you today the results of our study, which was conducted in 2018 and published as one of the ADB's knowledge products. On behalf of Dr. Nam here, who is the head of this team, and the energy sector, clean energy sector group of ADB, this is our presentation. Everyone has been talking about how clean cooking solutions and access has been lagging behind. But to me, the most surprising is the Philippines is one of among the top 10 countries with the largest population lacking in access to clean cooking. This is really a surprise to me. And of course, the slow progress in deploying clean cooking solutions in the Philippines needs to be highlighted, not only to government, but to everyone else in the country. Knowing that it is very important to get to know what's happening on the ground. Yesterday, this has been one of the topics that had been highlighted. We have to know what's happening on the ground. And for ADB, this is also very important. So what we did was to conduct a study in the Philippines amongst two cities, one urban, and the other one is landlocked, right here in Luzon. And this is in San Jose City and Iloilo City, which is in the island, Visayan Islands in the Philippines. So we really wanted to know the lay of the land. We want to know what's happening there, what are the preferences of the people doing cooking, and to identify the barriers as well as what could be the impact in terms of costs and how we can actually be able to plan and expand the market for clean cooking. So Here, I would like to give to you the results of the study. As you can see here, in Iloilo City, which is a highly urbanized city, 46% are still exclusively using traditional cook stoves, and only a few are using it with LPG and other modern cooking. And in San Jose City, though the LPG is being used potentially, but still 16% are using exclusively traditional cooking methods. Fuel stocking is very, very prominent and a common practice within the Philippines, because as the preference, as Dr. Nam mentioned, we love grilled food, and especially charcoal cooked food. And also, in fact, I would like to say that even in cooking rice, we would like to use traditional fuels rather than electric cooking or this aspect. So only a very small percentage right now is actually using electric cooking methods. And looking at the impact on health, and this is very important. This is ground level data in households. And as you can see here, the emission rate for using charcoal and fuel wood is way beyond the WHO emission reduction targets. So this means that in our households, the impact on women and children are very, very largely indoor air pollution quality is very bad. So, and this, of course, impacts on the health of the individual household members. On thermal efficiency, we actually conducted a comparative study amongst traditional cooking, cook stoves, improved cooking cook stoves that are available, and as well as, of course, gas and electric cookers. And as you can see here, the impact or the thermal efficiency is for charcoal, it is the least efficient amongst the different kinds of cook stoves. Electric stove, of course, has the highest efficiency level. We know that very well. But improved cook stoves, which are also available and can be actually used to, improve the efficiencies, even if you still use traditional cooking, is better, and it could provide a good solution for those who are doing stacking. Now, let us look at the considerations for shifting here. As we said, 16% of people in San Jose City are still using exclusively traditional fuels. But when asked if they would like to shift or they can consider shifting, 54% said yes, so which is encouraging. In Iloilo City, where a high percentage are still exclusively using traditional fuels, 73% said they are willing to consider. However, we have to take a look at why they continue to use traditional fuels. And the reasons for this, as you can see in the slide, are mostly because of perception. So it is something that we need to look at and be able to, if we message carefully, we would be able to maybe change their minds. So the barriers to shifting are basically the upfront costs. They think that modern cook stoves are expensive, and additional cost for the purchase of fuel is, a very big consideration on their part, especially when you talk about electricity here in the Philippines. We're one of the highest in Asia. So electric cooking is definitely one of a big consideration for people to shift. Perceived advantages of using traditional cook stoves. Some of them say that if they shift to LPG, the safety level is bad. It is prone to exploding. And of course, as mentioned earlier, the taste preferences. This is very important, especially for the Visayan area where I come from. And of course, there are specialized cooking needs that they need to consider, and which is why fuel stocking is a very, very prominent practice. Now, the third is lack of enabling environment. And this is very true. I'm a bit disappointed because even in our national energy plan, cooking is not a subject matter in the plan. So there is a lack of strategic, institutional, and policy support for clean cooking. There are no incentives to encourage even just the improved cook stove developers to do the work in terms of, building better. Financial sector is not there, and the stakeholders are basically not informed about the benefits of shifting to modern clean cooking solutions. Now here, we looked at the outlook of shifting to clean cooking technologies. And if you take a look at this slide, shifting to modern fuel substantially reduces PM 2.5 concentrations. And this is, again, a result of actual field tests within the households. And if you can see, if there is a fuel switch from charcoal to butane, in San Jose City, vented kitchen would have a reduction of about 60%, while in Iloilo City, even for unvented kitchen, it's 83.36%. And the better one is for fuel wood to electricity, then you would have a very, very high reduction in terms of particular particulate matters concentration within the household. So we can see how the impact of shifting would be in terms of particulate matter concentration within the household is going to be very helpful in terms of the health of women and children who are mainly in the households during cooking time. Now shifting to when we take a look at the savings and payback, because we took a look at how much would it cost to actually shift from traditional or traditional fuels to electricity or to other means of modern cooking. And here, the impact is that charcoal to single coil electric stove would have the highest in terms of savings and the quickest payback. This information is very, very important if we would like to give a message to the people to be able to change their behavior. So I just want to go swiftly into this, the takeaways. So for shifting to modern cooking, this is very, very essential for the Philippines. And as we can see, 46% in Iloilo and 42 and is already is still doing relying on traditional fuels. And for the entire population, it's 42% for 114 million total population in the Philippines. Shifting to modern cooking technology leads to better indoor air quality, which, as we said, is very good for the health. And shifting from charcoal to electricity would allow for the highest in terms of annual cost reduction. Improved cook stove also is a lower cost option to increase efficiencies. And of course, there is high interest. So the outlook for modern cook stove is very good if we take a look at all of this information. And the barriers, as we have said, is low awareness. The highest cost, the traditional use, including the negative impact of health. So people do not know that, in fact, they are at a health risk if they continue to use traditional cooking fuels. And the benefits to switching is not also known to them. Behavioral and cultural preferences and practices is still there, which we need to overcome, and also fuel stocking. And the most important is the non-inclusion of clean cooking in the National Energy Plan. This is something that we need to work on specifically so that clean cooking could be given priority. So how do we overcome the barriers? We said that we should integrate clean cooking into the country's national energy plan. This is to show that government is intentional in its support for clean cooking access. We have to generate the information. Ground truthing is very essential to enabling market development and expansion. We need to make sure that our policy development and the delivery mechanisms, the business models, are really grounded on what the local market is and what it prefers to be successful in actually changing the behavioral and the acceptance of people in the field. We have to increase public awareness to promote shifting to modern cook stoves. The health implication, the benefits, as well as environmental climate change impact should be highlighted in terms of when we talk to people and when we actually go into our capacity building programs. And lastly, I would like to say that we need to encourage local governments to act and address the local issues. And for this, I would like to actually relate to you that when we conducted this study in Iloilo City, it was good because the local government unit there was very, very supportive and, in fact, became aggressive. After we have done the studies, we reported to them, and right now, they are aggressively doing their own promotional work in actually clean cooking technologies. Unfortunately, there was pandemic and we were not able to go, but there was actually a plan for ADB to conduct an event, a workshop in Iloilo City itself to be able to present this study and to be able to contribute to the local government's desire to, in fact, promote clean cooking technologies. So with that, I would like to end by thanking everyone. Thank you for your attention. And if you want to know more, all the details of this study, it's available on the website of ADB, and that's over here. It's www.adb.org, Publications, Increasing Access, Clean Cooking, Philippines Perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Grace. It's interesting to me to see that in the survey there's high interest, but also then just generally very low awareness. And of course, interesting takeaway is that it starts with policy in the National Energy Plan. So thank you very much. I want to move quickly on just because we have a few additional presentations to get to before the break. and would like to begin now by inviting Ugen Rinzin, who's an engineer with the Department of Energy at the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources from the Royal Government of Bhutan. Please, the floor is yours.
Very good morning to all. It's a very great pleasure for me to hear and then to be here and then give a presentation on the initiatives on cook stoves, electric cook stoves, particularly in Bhutan. I am Ugen Rinzin, and I work for the Department of Energy under the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources for the Kingdom of Bhutan. Before going on with the electric cook stove initiatives or the project we are currently pursuing, I would like to give a brief background about our country for those of you who may not have heard about the country called Bhutan. So our country is one of the smallest countries in Asia, which lies in between the two giant countries of Asia, between the India and then the China. And we have a very small land area of roughly 38,394 square kilometer with a rough population of roughly around 750,000. And we are said to be one of the carbon negative countries in the world. So we sequester more carbon than what we emit. And then if I tell some brief about the energy sector in our country, much of the energy is driven through the renewable energy, particularly the hydropower generations. And currently we have only around 2,326 megawatt of installed capacity of hydropower, which would be very minimal compared to most of the hydropower projects in other countries. And apart from the hydropower energies, we also have venture into alternate energy, renewable energies such as the solar and wind, but this is by far minimal compared to any other countries. And we only have around 723 kilowatt of solar plant in our country, including those of solar home lighting systems we provide to the off-grid, those households which do not have access to grid electricity. And that is the only wind power plant we have in our country, 600 kilowatt with 2 wind turbines. And now, why we are venturing into clean cooking solutions? Because most of the energy is being, most of the petroleum products, especially for the cooking applications and also for the transport sector, we import heavily from our neighboring country. So there's a huge importance, or why do we need to transition to clean cooking rather than still do with the conventional mode of cooking using the biomass or the firewood, and also to do with the LPG cook stoves. As Bhutan has most of the land is being covered with forests, every households in the urban, in the rural areas, they have access to free firewoods. So this is the reason why most of the people still have that behavior that it is the firewood which would be very cheaper than any kind of any other fuel sources. So this is the reason why Bhutan cannot take up any initiatives on electric stoves or any e-cooking solutions compared to other countries, because of the behavior, because of the mindset of the people that the firewood is the very easily available, firstly, and then also the belief that they have been using the firewood for last 4-5 decades, and then there's a resistance to switch towards electric stoves. So here you can see that we have to wait in a very long queue in order to get the LPGs also. So in that case, that indicates how important is the country to transition to newer or electric stoves, because of the easy access to electricity firstly, and also because of the credits we have for the carbon emissions. So because of that, we have very recently launched the SDG 7 roadmap for the country with assistance or with support from UN ESCAPE, and we are very thankful to ESCAPE for such support. And as per the indicators of the SDG 7, first is access to electricity, and in this case, we already have access to grid electricity, almost 99.97, and yet we cannot make best use of the grid electricity we have, because most of the, as mentioned earlier, most of the cooking is driven through firewood or LPGs. And in case of the second indicator, access to clean fuels and technologies, this is what we lack despite the access to electricity. So that's the reason why we have come up with this project, this particular pilot project, in order to kickstart with clean cooking solutions so that we can achieve the SDG target by 2030. So of the 750,000 population, almost 33,000 of the population, almost roughly 23% of the population still don't have access to clean cooking solutions, and mostly they rely on firewood. That's why, like, the Royal government has as highlighted earlier, these are the reasons why we have why we need to pursue with the electric cookstoves projects. Firstly, like, it is very the clean cooking access rate is very low, and from the highest government authority, authority of the government, His Excellency, the Minister of, I guess I haven't put the updated presentation here. It's not the Ministry of Economic Affairs because of the new ministry. It has been restructured, and it's just the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources. So he has highlighted the importance of electric cookstoves and why do we need to kickstart with the electric cookstoves project. So this is the reason why, firstly, why we have come up with this electric cookstoves project. And particularly, we have opted for electric stoves, particularly an induction, and much of its importance and has been already highlighted by my earlier presentation. So it is already proven that it is the most efficient cooking technology. So we have also opted the same, and as highlighted earlier, we have access to grid electricity, so why not make benefit out of it just by transitioning to electric cookstoves. So as a result, Bhutan, with support from UN ESCAPE, and also there's another counterpart from United States known by the name MEX, Modern Energy Cooking Solutions. So they have supported Bhutan in coming up with this pilot project. And this pilot project is been broken down into two phases. So in the first phase, they have supported us with the around 40 to 50 numbers of electric cookstoves, which will be piloted in the country. And very recently, we have received those cookstoves, and it is yet to be distributed. And then, after once this is being distributed, and then the outcome of this first phase of the project would be to come up with the e-cookbook of the country. As Director Hong Peng Liu has indicated earlier, it would be like the recipe of the local foods that will be available in the country. So this would be the outcome of the first phase. And then along with that, they will also see that how willingness, or also the awareness can be created to the public, especially to the rural households who are not aware of such technology, and also their acceptance to transition to such kind of technology. And then in second phase, when we scale up the project in order to roll out at a national level, we will be venturing into carbon finance arrangements, carbon finance. And very recently, Bhutan has signed MOU with the Singaporean government, and we henceforth, like when this pilot project comes into picture after the first phase, then the financing can be we see to like seek this finance from the carbon finance markets. So because it is at the earlier stage, at the initial stage, we do not have like gone through the details of how much for the duration of the carbon credit, that project timeline, and also like the details on what are the amounts or in terms of benefits that will be get is not being detailed out, because very recently we have initiated this project. And I think like so I have only this much. So because much of the importance has been already highlighted earlier. So everyone knows that electric cook stove is the next technology to which is efficient to fight the climate change, and also in our country, like to retain the existing nature, we will have to transition to clean technologies like cooking stove. Thank you, and I would be happy to have any questions later. Thank you.
So I think we're coming up on the break as well after a few more presentations. So I would just invite folks to maybe hold your questions for our speakers for during the break. But thank you very much for that presentation. It's really interesting to hear about this, the Article 6 agreement, and it'll be interesting to see how well that aligns with the e-cooking and how well that investment opportunity aligns with your priorities on e-cooking. So thank you very much. For the next presentation, I'd like to invite our colleague Saibandit Sayavong who's the Deputy Director of the Cooperation Division at the Department of Planning and Cooperation, Ministry of Energy and Mines at the Government of Laos People's Democratic Republic. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. The first, we would like to say thank you for it to have the opportunity me to sharing about our country, about the electric cook stove. The first, we would like to present like for the clean cooking in Laos. Like the first, we come for the electricity from Laos. We almost we come from hydropower. It's like more than 80%. And also we have from the solar and wind. Also we have that is for our country to have the produced electricity. So for the cook stove also we know in the way like we have for the Lulu area, that's we have the youth for they don't know about electricity cook stove. That's why the new important for the resource this program. So we will see for our government to focus on electricity, like we use the policy that's to the based on the to do the work in the energy, like energy sector, where we have the strategy on the development plan energy sector on like 2020 to 2030. Also, we have the 5-year plan for the 2021 to 2025. Like we have the through the guideline to how to work, the way how to go with the energy sector. Also, we have the resolution approved by the to promulgate of the policy to use, and also we have the strategy plan for the promote the renewable energy of Laos PDR. And for we see the target of the Laos on the sector energy sector, like the most we focus on the energy and generation mix policy with the hydropower 75%, and for the coals and 40%, and non-hydro renewable energy like 11%. That is like a focus for our government, and also for the develop and renewable energy, such as the power, solar, wind, biomass, and biofuel, biogas, and others. We almost in domestic supply to export, and especially like for rural area that we know we do not have the grid and system, so that we need to promote the clean stock technology to reduce to use the coal as fuel. That's why it is important for an argument to focus on this one. And also we the background, like we have the SCAP to help us to drafting for the SDG 7 roadmaps on the in 2022. Yeah, identify to the challenge about the gap, how to we are shifting to the clean cooking. That's why we need to have the clean cooking about the less in the 2020 about 8.5%. That's why we for in the 30 we would like to have the cycle policy about the 1 million household for the cooking to with the traditional biomass and use the and also for the roadmap for the combined electric cost, LPG cost improving for the achieve and to assess this is also we guide to do on that. And for the potential of the electricity cost stock for Lao PDR, because in Lao we don't have the natural gas resource, and also we have the LPG stock and represent its risk of the country that do the price of and the supply stock like LPG is almost we import from the neighboring country for the LPG because we don't have energy resource for the LPG. That's why and Lao also and we have the electricity from the hydro. So we just focus on this to use to about the electricity in the first pilot, and also electricity for the is quite low and affordable for Lao, and electricity in a coastal high efficiency for Lao. And for the pilot projects that we discussed with the SCAP, we would like to discuss about the siren and the addressing to the cooking with the matter, and MEM now really case to an SCAP to provide the support about the thing like the clean cooking for Lao. And now we format and about the modernization support about the pilot project with them, and in inception we would like to have the first kick-off project this about Equator 3 in 2023. And the way forward for our PDR, we have the discussion about the clean cooking that have to need to identify the situation, the modernization implement the clean cooking project coordination national contact to of the LAPIDA. And also we need to find about the funding the agency like technical support, supplier, local member and technology. And also technology, we need to have we need to find about the clean technology to help us because we don't have much about the good technology. And also we need to have the see about the possibility about the using carbon credit machine to finance the clean cooking the project to be exempt. And also loan for the cook stove for start in 2024 because in Lao we not have much for the experience on the clean cooking so we need to have the disponibility to find out the new technology, and SCAP will find help us to do this project for the way how to go in for the clean cooking, because almost in Lao that we know we have from the clean electricity almost we don't have the others to make the carbon, so we need to have the available quantity for the electricity. This is for all the overview for the Lao on the electric coastal. If you have any question or you have anything more, we please can ask the question, and after that, in the break time, maybe. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much, Zaimbad. Very good to hear. And yes, just to say, we're running a little bit behind on time, and we have a break scheduled now. So our colleague from Nepal, Surya Kumar Sapkota, will instead lead us off after, after the break at 11. So we'll have a break now until about 11 o'clock. We'll come back, and we'll be hearing from colleagues from Nepal, from Georgia, and then Fiji. And then we'll have a second session on financing and reaching scale, where we will hear about a couple of the new sort of interesting financing opportunities for clean cooking. So with that, maybe we can go to a break, and with my thanks for your attention this morning, and we'll see you in about 30 minutes. I believe there's coffee and tea outside. Thank you. Hate to disrupt the photo opportunity. But thank you everyone for rejoining us. We're a little bit ahead, which is good. So I think we can get started, and it's been a, I hope, very informative sort of first half of the session on the country deep dives. I know that I found them very interesting and informative, and it's great to hear about a lot of the work that's being done in Philippines and Bhutan, and as well as in Laos. And we're going to continue on that theme now with a few more, I would say probably about 4 presentations on country deep dives, followed by a quick session on financing and reaching scale, where we'll hear about some innovative financing models and ideas and how we can get finance moving into the clean cooking sector. So without further ado, I want to invite our colleague Surya Kumar Sapkota, who is the director of the Planning and Monitoring Division at the Alternative Energy Promotion Center at the Ministry of Energy in Nepal, to give us some insights on Nepal's work on the clean cooking sector. So please help us welcome Surya. Thank you.
Good morning and namaste to all of you. Welcome to my presentations on expanding the access to clean and modern energy solution in Nepal. This is the outline of my presentations, and this is the just brief introduction of Nepal. It is a very small country between China and India, and it has the highest mountains. You can see the highest mountains, and then it is a birthplace of Buddha. The country has a very small, population 29.1 million as compared to India and China. And then the total GDP is very small. The country has federal system, even though we have a very small country, but it has federal systems with 3 tiers of governments, and about 95% of population have access to electricity, and it is almost 100% electricity from hydropowers. If you look on the current energy situations, we have a huge potential of hydropowers, but if you look on the economic potential, it is 42,000 megawatt, but we only generated 2,500 megawatt, very small. The total potential of solar PV is 2,100. If we take the 2% of the land area, feasible land area around the grid connected area, then we generate only 120 megawatts. So biggest solar PV power plant is 25 megawatt, supported by the World Bank. And then we have a wind potential, but so far we have only installed 153 kilowatt, very small, 10 kilowatt, 20 kilowatt, something like that, because we have a mountain area and it is very difficult to bring all these, turbine and other equipments in the mountain area, even though we have a good potentials. So about the clean cooking technologies, we have a potential almost 2 million biogas plant can be installed based on the number of cattle, that is cattle dungs. But so far we have installed only 449,000. Total potential of improved cooking stove is 3 million, but only half of those we harness so far. And electric cooking stove, it is difficult to estimate the potential, but based on the grid access and reliability, then we have a potential of 3 million. Household can install the electric cooking stoves, but so far very few households they install the electric cooking stoves, only 40,000 plus. And almost 50% of the households in Nepal are expected using the clean cooking technology. That also include the LPG, because it is debatable whether LPG is clean cooking or not. But in terms of clean, it is clean, but we are talking about the modern clean cooking solution, I think. If you look on the current energy situation, it is dominated by the fuel wood and then petroleum product that we import 100% from India, and then the coal that also we import. The LPG portion is 3.5%, but if you look on the electricity and renewable energy, it is around 6.2%, so it is very less. And then if you compare 2011 to 2021, within the 10 years, there is a reduction of the fuel woods, because it is substituted by the LPG and some e-cookings, and there is an increase of LPG almost 100% from 21 to 44%. It's almost 100% increase in LPG, because even in the rural area we found the LPG gas people are using, and then they are stopped to use the fuel woods, because LPG is very easy for cooking, and it is transportable, and they don't need to collect the fuel woods and others. And these are some of the models of the cooking technology in Nepal. The top side is the mud stove, even though it is efficient, 20% efficient, and then the pollution is going out through the chimney, and then down there is a biogas using, then the top right side, the rocket stoves, they are still using the fuel woods, but it is more efficient and portables. And then the bottoms right is electric stove, induction stoves. These are some of the technology that are available and using. Then we have government plans of generating electricity from the hydropower, mostly 15,000 megawatt by 2030. Per capita electricity consumption is very low as compared to other countries, even in the global average. We have a plan of electrifying 100% household population by 2024 in 2 years. Currently 95%, then within the 2 years 100% we expect. And then electric cooking stoves, we have a target 500,000 in the next 5 years, but every household will get electric cooking stove by 2030. That is the government plans. But we have, even though it is ambitious, but we have to see, because there is a question of reliability of electric supply, affordability of the electric supply, and then also cost of the technology is also major issues. Then biogas, we have a huge potential, and we target for additional 100,000 within the 5 years. Improved cooking stove, mostly the rocket stove, highly efficient, more than 30%. We plan almost 500,000 in the next 5 years. These three technology, electric cooking stove, household biogas, and improved cooking stove, that will be supported by the GCF, Green Climate Fund. Within the 5 years, 1 million additional households will get the modern cooking solutions. And then all provincial government, they have their own plans. Some 100% cooking, modern cooking within the few years, some 50%, some 60%, but they all have a target for replacing the LPG and fuel woods through the electric cookings. And the government has some policies, measures for providing the direct financial support in terms of subsidy. Government provide up to 60% of the subsidy, even for electric cook stove 100%, because now last year we targeted for providing the electric cook stove free of cost to the student coming from the rural area, studying in the urban area. So 100% we distributed. And encouraging the private sector for manufacturing, supply and installation, because we have a strong private sector in the biogas sector. Also there are private sector in the some improved cooking stoves, but in the electric cooking stove there are private sector, but they are just getting the technology from the other country, not local manufacturing. And reducing the greenhouse gas emission, of course, through promotion clean cooking stove. government research and development support for increasing efficiency, transfer of technology to the rural area. You cannot just give the technology and leave it, because we have to transfer, and there should be local distribution and repair and maintenance centers in the local area, so that people can use the technology for the, and also financing the clean cooking through the use of carbon fund. We generated around 33 million US dollar for selling of the carbon credit, mostly from the biogas. Then we are using that fund in the clean cooking solutions. So we have already experience for the carbon tradings, and increasing the awareness. That is very important in the rural area, because they have a very traditional approach using their own technology. So switching to the modern technology is very difficult, because it associated with the cost, and they don't have the confidence, and they don't have the repair and maintenance centers. And there are a number of opportunities for using the modern cooking stoves. Of course, reduction of the indoor air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions. Every year, around 10,000 people, they die from the cause of the indoor air pollution in Nepal, mostly the women and girls. Because the improved cooking stove, the cooking is mostly the job of the women in Nepal. I think that is the case in other developing countries as well. So if you switch to the modern technology, then there is male also can cook. So in the modern technology, but in the traditional technology, only the women and girls. And reduction of the imported petroleum product, because we import almost 3 billion US dollar every year for the import of the petroleum products, and half of that goes to the LPG, mostly for cooking. So if you substitute that, then we can install maybe 500 megawatt of hydropower every year, if we just substitute the LPG gas. And reduction of the workload of the women and school going children, because they are collecting and bringing and then using the firewood. So that substitute, if you switch to the modern technology, and green employment generation, branding and local generation, then reduction of the trade balance, because we import a huge amount of petroleum products, almost 100% every year from India, and we spend 3 billion last year. That is more than what we export, the goods and other things, to the other countries. So it is huge trade balance, and promoting the gender equality. I already said, if we switch to the modern technology, then there is more time for the women, for the income generation, and girls for the schools. So it improves not only the health, but education and income generation activities also. So access to international funding, GCF, Clean Fund, Challenge Fund. There are a number of funds available, but you have to access. Then, of course, there are key challenges for providing the 100% household with clean cooking. There are a number of challenges. One is designing the robust clean cooking technology. That is very key for the effective dissemination of the technologies. And there are limited local manufacturing capacities, so we have to enhance their capacities, and there is a lack of standardizations, because in the market you can see all the available technology, from the very low to high, and the quality and non-quality. So then you should have the national standardization and testing facilities. Then reliability and sufficient electricity supply for e-cookings, because there is electricity access, but it is not reliable. The cooking time is fixed, almost in the morning, day, and then evening. You cannot have a flexibility for lighting, but cooking is fixed. When there is no electricity, then they have to switch to the other technology. So reliability and sufficient electricity availability is very key. And of course, the mobilization of financial resources, internal and external, because no banks, they are interested to finance in the modern cooking technology. They are financed to big hydropowers and to big solar PV and big wind turbine, not small scale technology. Then access to easy financing. We have a microfinance in the rural area, I think, in most of the developing countries. So they can provide the small amount of credit to the local peoples. So they have more access to finance, providing the low cost repair maintenance. That is also key in the rural area, and of course increasing the adaptations is key. Then we have a number of lesson learned, designing various models, choice of the household for the various models. That is the key, and available, reliable, and affordable clean cooking technologies. That is also the key. Then we have to create the demands. The people has to demand, not we just supply. So if they demand, then there is a high increase of adaptation rate that we see because they continue use. And there is a standardization, testing, quality assurance, field-based monitoring that is a key for the continuous adaptation of the technologies. And access to finance, both grant and credit. Mix of grant and credit is, very important link with the technical backstopping. And there should be distribution, repair, maintenance center in the very rural area, because if there is a repair and maintenance center nearby, then people, if they have some problem, they can bring and fix the technology and they can continuous use. That is also key. And there should be integrated approach, not only supplying the modern technology, but it should link with the health, education, income generation, and rural development. So integrated approach, if you go, then it might be successful, and long-term policy and plan should be in place. Otherwise, the technology, cannot be. Yes. We have a number of collaboration with the number of institutions, Clean Cooking Alliance, and then Modern Energy Cooking Services UK, then UNCDF, we have a collaboration in the past, UNDP, then the government of Denmark, Norway, World Bank for disseminating the modern technologies. They supported for preparation of a country action plan, standardization of cooking technology, they supported especially for e-cooking. And also we have a collaboration for the market assessment of electric cooking technology in Nepal. What is the market status and sharing of information, resource mobilizations. So, thank you so much.
Many thanks, Surya, for the presentation. We're going to actually continue now with a sort of a complimentary video message from another colleague who is working in Nepal. So maybe we can flip to that directly. This is a quick message from Anoba Gurung, who I hope I've pronounced correctly, but Anoba is the Director of Nepal Research, Evidence and Learning for the Clean Cooking Alliance, who will be sharing on the Clean Cooking Alliance program in Nepal and harnessing geospatial planning methodologies for expanding access to clean cooking, which is very sort of similar and aligned to the integrated energy planning work that SE for All does. So hope you can stay tuned for this 7-minute video, and then we'll go to the next presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity to present about CCA's work in Nepal and how we are utilizing geospatial methods in the clean cooking sector. Since 2018, CCA has been working closely with the government of Nepal, providing tailored support to help them achieve their ambitious clean cooking access goals, especially those around electric cooking. Our work in Nepal on electric cooking started way back in 2018 with the Nepal Health Demonstration Project. This project provided us with various key learnings, especially on price comparison between LPG and induction stove, how do we conduct demand aggregation in Nepal context, infrastructure required for induction stove usage, and more. Overall, the studies show that electric cooking does fit the need of Nepali communities, and when certain enabling environment and interventions are present, the locals will shift to e-cooking. The next question and challenge for us was how do we ensure that these transitions to electric cooking are sustainable as well as scalable? So this led us to launch our next effort in Nepal, and this was to develop a Nepal Country Action Plan working very closely with Alternative Energy Promotion Center. And we wanted to develop an action plan with a clear, strategic, and an evidence-based roadmap with an actionable list of prioritized interventions. And those interventions, those were related mainly for the promotion of electric cooking. During this development, CCA has worked extensively with APC and later on with the National Planning Commission. The whole plan, the Country Action Plan, is built on rigorous research, consultations, and close coordination with key stakeholders, and currently we are in the process of getting the CAP approved by the APC board. So during the development of the Country Action Plan, we found that there are some critical steps that needed to be taken to ensure ownership of the plan. First, We needed to ensure that the Nepal Country Action Plan is built and tailored to the Nepal context and also well aligned with the government of Nepal's goal and activities and integrated into the national energy agenda. And to ensure this alignment, CCA ensured that APC took the lead in the development of the country action plan, while we provided the resources and expertise to support the process. The development of the country action plan also involved a participatory process where stakeholders were involved in each step, and this really was important as it allowed us to leverage the learnings from the sector, but as well as gain buy-in required for the plan. So to ensure that the country action plan is strategic and evidence-based, CCA has conducted various research to fulfill the knowledge gaps in the sector. For example, one of the studies we have completed is on assessing the electricity infrastructure for widespread adoption of e-cooking in Nepal. Similarly, CCA has also been helping the government of Nepal to develop national standards for electric cooking to ensure that high-quality electric cooking technologies are available in the market. But throughout this work, as we did all these research and various consultations, we have collected a lot of data, and this led us to collaborate with World Resource Institute and KTH to work on the Energy Access Explorer. Energy Access Explorer is a user-friendly online open source geospatial platform to support integrated energy planning. So the platform provides the government of Nepal and other key stakeholders across the public and private sectors with the spatial data and tools needed to inform strategies for a robust clean cooking transition in Nepal. It also allows to visualize and think of supply, demand, and enabling environment holistically rather than in silos. Overall, the Explorer supports strategic decision-making, for example, when it comes to prioritizing areas for the uptake of clean cooking based on spatial data. It supports effective planning and supports expansion of markets, for example, by utilizing and visualizing existing and potential market using location-specific data. And finally, it enables a data-driven coordination by functioning as a data repository with one-stop platform to share data. The team has also worked on developing a tool that we call OnStove, which is a geospatial clean cooking tool for determining net benefit of cooking with different stoves across the area. The tool will select the technology that can provide cooking in each settlement with the highest net benefit. For example, here you can see for Nepal in the map, the output map with the optimum stove mix. Here, benefits like the maximum net benefit mix of technology, investment cost, deaths avoided, health cost avoided, emission avoided, and time saved are captured. And on the other hand, costs related to capital, operation, maintenance, and fuel costs are captured. So moving forward, CCA will continue to work on supporting the government of Nepal to achieve its clean cooking targets. This year, we are initiating a pilot project in Nepal to demonstrate a market-based approach to promote a sustainable electric cookstoves market, where we are bringing together our learnings and experience as well as our strong relationship with key stakeholders. In Nepal, through this pilot project, we are also exploring carbon financing to enhance the affordability of electric cookstoves to marginalized consumers and also to bring the much-needed investment to push the sector forward. In the end, we hope to share our learnings to attract investment, accelerate innovations, and scale opportunities to increase access to clean cooking in Nepal and the region. Thank you.
And our thanks to Anoba for providing that presentation. And so hopefully between those two presentations, you've got a very sort of holistic understanding of both the policy planning approach in Nepal as well as data tools that can help inform investment. And of course, we'll hear a little bit further on types, on sort of interesting financing mechanisms coming up a little bit later in the program. But for now, we'd like to continue on with our country deep dive session with a speaker from the government of Georgia. So at this point, I would like to invite Omar Zaratelli, who is the Deputy Head of Energy Efficiency and Renewables for Energy Policy and Sustainable Development Department at the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development in the government of Georgia. Omar, the floor is yours.
So I greet you all. This is an honor to me being here today and representing the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development of Georgia. So just before I get started, so as it was very well mentioned by Temojit, so this is Omar Zaratelli. I'm Deputy Head of Energy Efficiency, Renewable Energy Policy and SDG Department of the Ministry. And today I'm going to present the information related to the clean cooking, and the clean cooking technologies and the cook stoves, electric cook stoves, and the proceedings we are just forwarding in Georgia. But so my presentation won't be the only touching the electric cook stoves. That will be kind of the overview of the energy sector itself. So let me start with a few words regarding Georgia, as the other participants also touched their countries and the population and the area. So my country is located in the South Caucasus with the approximate area of 69,700 square kilometers, and the average population is approximately 3.740 million persons, and so we have the more than Tbilisi population is 1.2 million, and the official language is Georgian, and so the neighbors in the Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey to the south, and to the north the Russia, and the western part is just located in the Black Sea itself. So to start the development, to start the overview of the development of the energy policy itself, so I should mention the following, that since 2019, we Georgians, since signing the association agreement with the European Union and the other commitments, for instance, being the contracted parties of the energy community, we are following and then we are transposing the relevant directives into our national legislation. We are working on the laws and bylaws. For instance, the law on energy and water supply, which is written as the first in the list, so is one of the main law of Georgia in terms of the energy, and then the law on the renewable energy, and right now we are just transposing the new directive of the renewable energy of the energy community into our national legislation, and the same happens in terms of the energy efficiency law. So we have this energy efficiency law already adopted in 2020, but still, so there is another new directive has been emerged, and so we are now in the process of transposing this new directive into our national legislation, and the energy performance in buildings. That's also very core and a very key document in terms of the construction, for instance, so the minimum requirements of the energy efficiency of buildings, which is coming from this energy performance requirements of the buildings, the main law. So we are this law is going into force, this energy performance in buildings and the minimum requirements of the energy efficiency, and from the 1st July of the current year, for instance, all constructions which are about to be built from the July 1st, so all of them should meet the minimum energy efficiency requirements, and that will be the obligation for all kind of the construction in Georgia. And so we are just set and defined the several working groups, and we are working tightly with the other energy and construction companies to get ready for this 1st of July. But this time period is not only the launching period for this reform, so there are other reforms we are also carrying out, and the law on energy labeling is one of the direction also of the energy efficiency, and we are right now adapting the bylaws related to this main law, and here you can see, and the other representatives also mentioned the national determined contribution, this NDC, and climate strategy plan, and the CAP, which are both of them are already approved. And so the long-term long-term emission development strategy. Also, I should mention it was approved about months ago by the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, and we, Ministry of Economy, and we, the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Agriculture, are working tightly in this direction just to adopt as many laws and bylaws as possible to fulfill the obligation we have from the international organizations, and that's that's of utmost significance for us to mention here. And so the long-term and the short-term period. So what plans we have in this direction? So this, one of the key strategic document the ministry is working on is National Energy and Climate Plan, this NECP, and which covers the period of 2021 to 2030. So it it includes the targets of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and greenhouse gas emissions, and we think that the ambition, and I will come to this point a little bit later, and let's discuss this issue more tightly in the coming slides. I will go to another topic. So it's an energy market liberalization. So even for this reform, we have the oriental kind of date, the 1st of July, even in this case, and we are going to launch the energy market from this current. From the 1st of July of the current year, and so this will set the intraday market, the balancing market, and so we are also we think that it will be kind of more effective to set the balancing situation and to make the competitive price for all the stakeholders, and so that's also one direction of the reform the ministry is keen on to implement, and practical implementations. There's the EPBD, the EPB law, the ERI laws, and some other laws. So I have talked too much about the laws, and so maybe it was a little bit kind of boring and routine. I will go to another slide. And that's the SDG 7 in Georgia implementation and 23 targets in Georgia. So you know that the SDG 7 is very important, not only for us, also for the other stakeholders in Georgia, but due to the fact that it's related to the energy, so we are the main stakeholders who are working on this issue. And I brought here some statistics. For instance, in my country, the access to electricity is around 100% already, but 89% of population had primary reliance on clean fuels and technologies in 2020, and that will be more broadly just broken down in the other slides as well. Share of renewable was 21.5% in 2021. Now it's more or less, and then I will also explain the reasons why it happened like this. And energy intensity level of primary energy in Georgia was, for instance, 3.8 megajoule per GDP in 2019, and it's also the stabilized number. And international cooperation, I should mention, is very important. So with the SCAP, for instance, the other donor organizations, including ADB, they are providing very clear and very profound assistance to fulfill the obligations and to become one of the leaders in the region, and we are trying and doing our best. So just in the previous slides, I have touched the issues related to the targets. About 1 year ago, so there was a committee in Vienna induced by this energy community, and there the contracting parties just agreed to have the targets for 2030 in terms of the greenhouse gas emission, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. So you can see on the slides the numbers we agreed. That in terms of the renewable energy, by 2030, we think we will have 27.4%. And as for the energy efficiency, it's divided into two parts, the primary energy consumption and final energy consumption. You can even see the numbers of the megatons we have agreed with the community, and so the greenhouse gas emission target is very interesting as well, 47%. So still, we think that those targets are very ambitious for us, for Georgia. It's not very simple to just to fulfill it by 2030, because lots of the projects should be carried out, and lots of the scenarios should be considered, and so on and so on. But still, we are just trying our best to fulfill the requirements. And let's go to the background of the pilot project development we would like to mention here. So we, with the active assistance of ESCAP, created and we developed. By the way, ESCAP was involved, who just prepared and then published the SDG roadmap for Georgia by 2030, and it's an important tool for planning the energy sector itself, which will enable Georgia to develop the right policies for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal 7. And the challenges and gaps in achieved universal access for clean cooking are the following. That we have, when it comes to the clean cooking, in several chapters gives you the following information, that access to clean cooking role was 89%, as I mentioned, but in 2030, under the current policies, about 32,000 households will rely on cooking with traditional biomass and kerosene. So several health problems also will arise, we think, and this impact would arise if this is not addressed. So the roadmap suggests to use electric cook stoves to achieve the universal access, and we just are doing our best with the relevant policy legislative framework to create the relevant form and the legislative background for the fulfillment of those agreements. So the potential for, and here is also the brief statistics. Maybe I'm running out of time, but still I will just provide a brief information on that. Georgia does not have the natural gas resources. That's the main problem of the country, to be frank, and it relies on imported natural gas. But here also, some of the presenters also mentioned the LPG stoves. Here, and also LPG stoves present a risk to the country due to the potential price and supply shocks, as LPG is largely imported. Also, Georgia has already achieved the universal access to the electricity, and I have mentioned it to the previous slides. And the electricity in my country is largely carbon neutral, sourced mostly from the hydro and the small share of wind power. And of course, the tariff is very low. This will be this low tariff seems to be very comfortable just for the vulnerable customers, which we'll have in Georgia, but to compare it more generally, so that's not nice, because that's not the competitive price for the other source of the energies as well. Yes, and pilot project in discussion. Yes, how we think these electric cook stoves should be encouraged, and so they should be supported from the government itself, from the ESCAP itself. So we think with ESCAP to have discussed these challenges and needs to address the clean cooking matter, as Moisit is likely to request the UNESCO to provide support to achieve universal access to clean cooking. And just the inception workshop will be held to initiate the pilot project. We think we have the plans like this. So the other financing mechanisms, like for instance, the GCF or the carbon credits and the other programs might be very useful for us to develop this direction as well in the country. So that was a brief just overview from me provided, and in case of any questions, please feel free to provide any types of question you would like to provide. Thank you for being a good listeners. Thanks. Yeah. No?
Seeing none, maybe it's all clear, and we can find Omar. All right, thank you. Yeah. Thanks very much. And yeah, it's very interesting to see how clean cooking fits into sort of energy efficiency policy in Georgia generally, and sort of the rationale for wanting to prioritize e-cooking in particular. It was, I think, quite useful, and I think cooking as an efficiency story is perhaps a little bit underappreciated in terms of the support that clean cooking can give to progress on SDG 7.3. So thank you. Up next, I would like to invite a colleague from the government of Fiji to give the final country deep dive. So please welcome to the stage Daniela Tabuya, who's a Principal Scientific Officer in the Department of Energy in the Ministry of Infrastructure and Transport at the government of Fiji. Daniela, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben, for the introduction. Greetings to you all. Yeah, my name is Tanyala. I'm from the Department of Energy. Currently looking after managing the renewable energy development programs within Fiji. So, just a brief highlight. I'm so glad that we were able to give an opportunity to speak on this area, because in the Pacific, this is ignored most of the times. Just a highlight of Fiji. That's population of Fiji is just around nearly 900,000. Mostly the focused areas that we focus on are the people that are the areas that are at the islands at the bottom, not the two big islands, but like I've heard today, now the focus is also on urban areas. But we are mostly focused to also impact the rural areas where they mostly have more health impacts for using open firewoods. Just an overview. In the Pacific, the real definition in the Pacific is what is clean cooking. Because mostly we use open fire, and the question is when they bring in improved cook stoves, we still use fire, woods, different types of woods. The design still causes more problems. So when we go to villages or when we try and do awareness with clean cooking, the question is always asked, what is clean cooking? WHO, as already mentioned, there was a study, has also identified that open fire are considered as well as unclean. So the question is for us today, what is exactly the right method to go through? When we did, thank you NISCAP for also providing us with the SDG roadmap for Fiji. When we were doing that, we also brought in different strategies and how to also get this problem clear. But the only areas we can focus on is electric stoves or LPG is the best option. But like I mentioned, for those areas right at the bottom, transportation is transportation costs. And the boat goes there once a month or twice a month, so transportation is an issue. So LPG, we put it in our SDG roadmap. LPG was the most important for those areas. Insights of clean cooking, like plenty people has already mentioned, how the benefits of it and how the long-term impacts on it, so I'll just skip through that. These are the sources of cooking in Fiji currently. The trend from 2007 and 2017. You can see that 72% of people in Fiji currently lack access to clean cooking. And still is. From 2007, you can see there was a change in open fire. But due to COVID, you will see in the recent year, due to COVID, it has increased. More than half of the population is back to using open fire because of the cost of LPG. And our electricity, it says that 60% of it is renewable from hydro, but due to weather conditions, we currently burn more fuels. So if we look into electric stoves, that is another problem that we have to identify, what kind of sources that we are actually using. Just the overview of our National Energy Transition Plan. Like any other country, our target is also very ambitious. By 2036, we have to, it's close to 100% renewable. So that is a target, I believe 2036 is not far out. So with the help of many other institutes, I hope that Fiji will be able to reach our target. So the NDP, as I mentioned, is our National Development Plan states that by 2036 we'll have 0% of population with primary lines on woods. But currently, like I mentioned already, the trend says otherwise. And the roadmap for Fiji that was currently provided by UNISCAP, you can see that business, as usual, the trend grows and keeps growing. but that's how the study was done, calculation was done. But due to impacts on the ground, like I've mentioned, changes has been happening. Most of this hasn't moved. Clean cooking has been really ignored in the Pacific. So given the opportunity such as this, I believe it will open some areas where many people can come in and also assist Fiji in these areas. Government has done some of the projects, has also tried to look into these areas as well, like improved cooking stoves, like I've mentioned, the rocket stove. But like I've always told many people, before they bring something into the table, make sure that it's researched and proven. So most of these improved cooking stoves are because, in one of the talks with World Bank also listed that the Pacific is the end of the market chain for equipments, for materials. So what is not worked in other countries, they come and put it in the Pacific. So that's something else we are also alert of, we are also aware, and we also stated in our national energy policy that is currently passed by Cabinet. These are the areas we are looking into as well to improve clean cooking cook stoves, clean cooking in the Pacific. There's some challenges that I believe most of the countries also mentioned, and just the evidence on how to boost adoption and impact, requires behavior change and cultural shift, and fuel stacking. In the Pacific, we don't move by fuel chain, by energy ladder. Changes in fuel, even if your income increases. Mostly in the Pacific, they are energy stack. What type of fuel comes across is easier, is cheaper, everyone uses it. So open fire is still mostly used in the Pacific because it's readily available. There's some recommendations, coordination and institutional cooperation, and regulatory, more awareness, like such a training as this, such forums as this, for capacity building as well, should be enhanced in the Pacific for clean cooking. And appraisal, monitoring, and evaluation. Some, like I've seen that most of these programs that Nepal has been using will be very interested if it's also shared in the Pacific, so that we could be able to get our data, correlate our data, and actually know what areas that Fiji is it at the moment. Just a short introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tanyela. It's really, I think, quite interesting to hear, in part the impact of COVID and the impact that has on cooking over wood and the challenges that are faced in Fiji. I think it's a good reminder as to us all of the diverse nature of the challenge on clean cooking, and that was one of the first sort of explicit mentions of capacity building that I've heard as well. And I think it's important to remember that as we think about policy and data, that capacity building is an integral ingredient in success, in ultimate success. So that sort of concludes the series of country deep dives that we've done. And I want to thank our speakers from governments for participating in that session. And we'll transition now to the part of the agenda on financing and reaching scale. And I think, it's all well, for countries to prioritize clean cooking, and I think we've heard that now. Clean cooking is sort of increasingly on the agenda. It's not an orphan, and we've heard about how we're moving from prioritization to concrete planning on cooking. From SE4All side, we believe that the IEP model can support this by providing data that's bankable and affordable. And then, of course, as we heard, we have to, I think, also think about capacity building among a number of other different factors. I think a fourth element of this is money, and particularly of interest, which we'll hear about a little bit more, is the opportunity, and I think actually we've touched on this a little bit in terms of Bhutan and Nepal and the way that this is being thought about, but the opportunity to link carbon markets with clean cooking as a way of supporting finance and scaling up. And it's also important to support kickstarting investment in private sector operators, in particular SMEs. And then again, the final thought before we switch over, how e-cooking opportunities, I think in particular, create a lot of opportunity to link to carbon markets is another sort of interesting topic that I think we're getting ready to explore. So I think we're doing well with time, so hopefully we will have a little bit of time for Q&A after this next round of speakers. So those of you who are speaking on this next session are forewarned. But first, I would like to welcome Samir Thapa, who's a research associate with the Modern Energy Cooking Services for a presentation on gold standard carbon financing metering methodology. Samir.
Thank you, Ben. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be making this presentation today. I'll be basically talking about this gold standard methodology on carbon financing that we support develop. That's basically for modern energy cooking services. When you say modern energy cooking services, we're basically talking about bioethanol, biogas. And we particularly focus on electric cooking, but not exclusively on electric cooking. So today I'll be basically talking about what was the process that was involved in developing this methodology. Next, at what stage we are with respect to kind of implementing this methodology, and then some of the lessons learned. Now, before I go into the details on that methodology, I'd like to say a few words about MEX. MEX is a UK aid-funded project which works in countries as you heard before, in Asia and Africa. But the primary goal is to kind of break out of the business as usual approaches in the sector at the moment, as I said before, to focus on modern energy cooking services. And the intended outcomes of the program is to make ready some of the market-ready technologies and business models, and also represent MEX outputs in the SDG 7.1, particularly a global tracking framework, and then, as mentioned earlier, a little bit more with respect to how electric cooking particularly could be integrated within the larger energy access planning that was mentioned earlier as well by many of the distinguished delegates here. Yeah, can I go? Oh, sorry. Oh, I have to. Oops. Yeah, and in terms of the outputs, we've got like five outputs. Five outputs, and then okay, I'll just close this thing. Five outputs, and one of the outputs is with respect to financing, and of these five outputs, I mean these within the electric or clean cooking promotion, these five outputs tend to support the supply chain, the consumer awareness, and including the enabling environment with respect to policy development, and financing fits one of the puzzles within that overall jigsaw. And within carbon financing is one of the major financing tool that we're thinking about with respect to overall financing, different financing instruments, and we are not only working with respect to carbon financing, but also working with other financing instruments such as equity investment and results-based financing tools. And I also want to mention that with carbon financing, we're also at the moment bundling financing with respect to other SDG impacts such as health and gender. And with respect to why MEX was supporting this development of this methodology, there were two things. One was with respect to increasing commitments through NDCs, through net zero targets, and increasing carbon pricing with respect to carbon taxes and emission reduction schemes. And we thought like there will be an increase in the prices. One, and also the next one was with respect to development in the technology, particularly with respect to electric cooking, and where city as a fuel could be kind of integrated with the digital platforms that was emerging. So those two were the major kind of reasons that we were involved in this development of this methodology. A little bit on the background to methodology work. What we did was we started talking with Gold Standard, with our partner, Climate Care at that moment, but now Climate Impact Partners, in terms of how we should go about developing this methodology. And we could have developed this as part of an existing methodology, that is with Gold Standard, being largely used for clean cooking at the moment. You might have heard about it, which is called TPDDTEC. But then after having discussed with the major stakeholders in the sector, it was suggested that it would be better to go for a completely new methodology that would particularly focus on modern energy cooking, including electric cooking. Climate Care was contracted to do this methodology development work, and there were two phases to this methodology development. One was to develop the methodology itself, and then to handhold a project developer to kind of implement this project and finally get the completion with respect to the issuance verification issuance of the carbon credits. This methodology was introduced in October 2021, and as I said earlier, it covers electric, LPG, biogas, and bioethanol cooked stoves. And the major advantage of this methodology is that it reduces the cost that is involved, primarily with respect to surveys for verification that in that the electric cooking stoves can be used, the electricity uses can be used as a data. And it's also, the other positive point in the sector is that there are already these market-ready digital platforms, not only for electric, but also for other fuels at the moment. And then one of the principal reasons and the advantage of this methodology is that it not only reduces the cost, but with respect to digital platforms, it also improves the integrity of the methodology as well as the overall system. I don't know how much you have heard, but at the moment there's a big kind of discussion going on with respect to overcrediting of a lot of these already existing methodologies. So there are a few technical kind of points that we want to highlight. It was in the first version that we developed. We used the usual water boiling test efficiencies to calculate the emissions reductions between the baseline stoves and the project emission stoves. But with that water boiling test, what it doesn't do is integrate the chemical properties or the physical properties of some of the stoves, such as electric pressure cookers, where beyond temperature, it's also the pressure that impacts on the food cooking. So a second version was introduced, which introduced that aspect of the clean cooking, electric cooking stoves, and a different calculating methodology was equation, as you say, was introduced, which was basically introducing the specific energy consumption that was derived from clean cooking control test. And now I'll talk a bit about the pilot. At the moment, we are supporting, I don't know how many, probably you might have heard about ATEC, which is an Australian-based company, which has not a prototype, but a kind of a mainstream IoT-enabled stoves at the moment, which they are promoting in Bangladesh and Cambodia. We have got a pilot supporting a pilot of 6,000 units at the moment. And it's expected that there will be around 500,000, carbon credit units by 2025. And with respect to pricing, I mean, the project, we have been able to secure a price of $8 per ton of credit at the moment, and the expectation, as I said earlier, is that it will increase beyond that to up until to $14-15 per credit. And it's interesting, I would like to point this out in terms of the benefits, how the benefits are being shared from the carbon credits. One is it will reduce the cost, which is at the moment somewhere around $250 because of being an IoT enabled. So this will reduce the cost by 50%. And the next, we are piloting a project with ATEC, which is also MEC supported, called Cook to Earn. So this will, not only in terms of the upfront cost, but also incentivize the use of electricity by, subsidizing the tariff. So it's a kind of a virtuous circle that more you use, the more credit you'll gain, and then, there will be more scale up. Some of the lessons learned, I'm talking about some of the lessons learned. One is with the timeline. I think this is pretty much with all the projects that are out there, because there's, given the number of standards that are out there, these validated third-party auditors are spread across these standards, and they're not, they're overburdened, I would say. So in that context, and also being a pilot project, we have gone beyond the time limit. And normally, as per the regular timeline, the validation is carried out within a year. So we have gone beyond the timeline at the moment. Next is, we had to go through a very steep learning curve with respect to establishing some of the values that are required to calculate the emissions reduction, such as FNRB, which is the non-renewable biomass fraction, and then the baseline values for fuel consumption. And also, it was difficult to carry out or understand the process with stakeholder discussion, which is very rigorous in terms of how to go about telling the stakeholders about the project and getting buy-in from all the stakeholders. But one important, stepping stone with this methodology was that getting the real-time usage monitored through a dashboard that ATEC has developed. It has happened in other technologies such as solar irrigation, but it hasn't happened in modern cooking. So it was a new initiative for us. Another thing is that with respect to modern cooking and electric cooking, there's when we think about electric cooking, we think about common hot plates, induction and infrared stoves, but there are other kind of technologies such as air fryers, microwaves, ovens, which are not very common in LMICs, the developing countries, and which could be the next set of technologies beyond induction and other infrared cookers. And we found out that insulation is a key, especially with respect to electric pressure cookers, and pressurization, as I said earlier, that was as part of the included as part of the methodology, could be a big boost for energy efficiency, somewhat similar to change of the bulbs from incandescent to other type of bulbs. I talked about air fryers and other stoves, and then with the changes in these technologies that are happening so fast, not only in the technologies but with respect to digital platforms as well, these standards and methodologies have to keep up with these changes. That was one of the lessons also learned. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Samir, and hopefully, I think we'll try to see if we can have a little bit of time for questions after the next two presentations, in case you have any for Samir on that. I know I do for sure. But next up, I would like to welcome Vincent Vieira, who's the Global Energy Lead at the UN Capital Development Fund, to give us a brief presentation on channeling finance to frontier clean cooking markets. Thank you very much, Vincent. There you go.
So thank you, everybody, for attending this session. I'm from the UN Capital Development Fund, which is a very small UN agency, which you probably never heard of. But we're basically the UN's catalytic finance entity, and we cover 46 LDC countries primarily in our work. The emphasis of our work is both advisory and development type of programming, but also financing for the private sector, for local and decentralized government entities. And we have the mandate to not only provide grant funding, but we can also do some catalytic loan and guarantee funding, both on our own balance sheet and off balance sheet with fund managers that we work with. Energy, climate, and nature assets are quite an important component of our work. And you can see here we have quite a large footprint, although we're a very tiny organization. And we have strong capacities also in the fields of digital finance that we've built over the last 15 years, starting in the Pacific, but really strongly geared up in Africa and Asia also now. So to go on to show one of the specific models that we use is and how we work is we think of how we can really make change in markets happening and supporting energies, service companies, for example, or financial institutions along a certain investment spectrum. And you can see that, you know, the investment spectrum, and there are many ways of describing this, capital stack, etc. But it basically involves a movement from a startup early phase all the way up to mature phase when projects become bankable and investable by private sector. And every entity has roles to play. And we play roles in different parts of that investment spectrum. So this is one specific example that I just want to show where, for example, in Uganda, we started a partnership with Aptec, which was a local energy company doing standalone solar units. And we first supported them with institutional capacity building to strengthen their business plan, financial projections, estimations. We did that through an innovation grant fund, through a challenge request for application. And then we provided them with a loan, a concessional loan, quite soon after we did that initial capacity and TA support. And then we were able to collaborate with a local bank, Stanbic, which is quite one of the larger banks in sub-Saharan Africa, where we provided some financing, but we actually succeeded in unlocking local finance to scale up the business. And of course, it's still a very small business, but it's an important step to have these kind of approaches in challenging markets and to really have hundreds of such businesses deploy solutions in markets where we work also for clean cooking. So I'm first, I didn't make a slide on the challenges, and I probably should have, but I think it's worth highlighting some of the scale of the task which we're up against. Firstly, only about 3.5% of the required financing for clean cooking solution is now or has been deployed per year. So we're only looking at about $130 million that's currently being spent on clean cooking solutions, while it should actually be billions of dollars. And then Dr. Nam also explained from the ADB's perspective how we're also not really capturing all the externalities and the cost reduction that potentially could come through introducing cleaner cooking solutions. And therefore, you know, on a national public finance level, actually adding a lot of value. A challenge that's also been there recently, I think, is the voluntary carbon markets has suffered some credibility issues with some quite negative reports coming out on For example, some of the big multinational companies basically having junk carbon offset value, and this is a big concern for us, but also maybe something that could be helpful in building a more credible public carbon market in the future along the Paris Article 6 lines. Then in local markets, you know, we have high cost of local capital, we have foreign exchange risks if systems are imported, there's a lack of blending that's going on in local markets. And also I would say RBF funding can become sort of a supply-driven model that sometimes when you withdraw RBF funding, actually companies do not continue to grow in local markets, which can be a problem also. And then, of course, we have two other problems that I'll mention. One is the lack of understanding of business models, unit costs. You know, we're talking about LPG, we're talking about briquettes, cooking. We're talking about completely different business type, distribution versus manufacturing, and all the supply chain links. This is very complex business, and it's very bulky. These are bulky assets that you have to move from place to place. Finally, there's also the affordability gap. Why should somebody in Uganda or in Myanmar pay $50 for e-cookie solution when they still can chop down some branches in their backyard and basically do a 3-stone cooking solution for free? So these are real tough questions. We think there are some potential solutions in digitalization of the supply chain for cooking. And I think there's a lot of lessons we can draw here from standalone solar. If you look at the real explosion of solar, that has not only happened, I think, in advanced countries, but also in very remote, difficult countries, conflict countries like in Yemen, for example, where the grid has been completely decimated. People use solar solutions to light their house. And also a lot of these solar solutions have been using very innovative financing models. For example, you may be familiar with the M-Pesa mobile payment system in Kenya that is being used for M-Kopa, which is essentially a solar solution provider that has expanded to an e-commerce model. But with this e-cooking, you can do many things. You can collect data, you can do much more accurate MRV measurement through geotagging, you can have, you know, sensor data from the device to see how people are using it. You can do mapping of where devices are, where market demand is, and so on. So on the MRV side, it's very high potential, and it can offer a very convenient way also for the customer to pay for their system. So they can, you know, make mobile installments to amortize their assets. And I think that's something that's very important to keep in mind, how we keep it convenient and real for the consumers. But digitalization has many other advantages. I mean, you can actually strengthen business models, you can do demand mapping, you know, better customer service and HR management through digital solutions. So maybe to just round off the digital piece is that we're looking with the Clean Cooking Alliance at promoting digital innovation in the cooking sector. We actually had a challenge launched a few months ago where we looked both at the role of digital innovation for financing solutions and the use of data to basically make it more attractive for investors to come in and invest in the sector. Another element that I want to raise here is receivables financing. As you know, we're often dealing with many customers, and we're talking about very small amounts of money. So it's not very attractive for investors to come in and invest in energy service companies that deal with very sort of last mile customers. But if we're able to pool receivables, expected payments, either from the customers themselves or from carbon stream revenues, actually you can set up SPV vehicles or some sort of pooled structure that can pull in commercial funding, especially also if you add something like a first loss or a guarantee portion, and actually that's the way to go to capital markets and to get the finance that's needed to really scale this sector. Because at the end of the day, as I said in the beginning, we're looking for billions of dollars of investment and not millions, and we need to look at very interesting new capital structures to make that happen. Another part that I just wanted to mention, it's been highlighted by a number of colleagues already here, is how Article 6 and carbon finance at the global level can play a role. We know that clean cooking commitments are made even in NDCs, but this is not done by all countries. But at the same time, we're looking at some very wealthy countries. For example, take a country like Singapore, who's interested to buy carbon credits in other countries in the region. And there can be an offset trade happening where, for example, cooking solutions sold in, for example, Nepal or Bhutan could actually be sold in a carbon offset trading scheme with wealthy countries that are needing those offsets, such as Singapore. So I think that has a lot of potential, and how that solidifies as an income stream, I think is very important. Just to mention, just from 2017, the amount of money that clean cooking companies are receiving from carbon credit generation revenues, it has risen from 0 to around 40% in just 3 years. And that's mostly on the voluntary market basis. So I think we have a long runway to go in terms of making carbon credits extremely lucrative for companies. Just a few more comments. One is that we also can look at productive use of solutions. So for example, where you have larger companies that use heating or other type of solutions requiring firewood or fossil fuels, how can we make an energy transition story out of that? For example, I know a lot of bakeries in some countries still use a lot of fuel wood for baking bread, but if they can move to electric devices, this would make it very interesting and also makes the economics much more attractive. Then finally, we also have the nature assets story, where different entities are launching, for example, wildlife conservation bonds or forestry conservation bonds. And that can be another source of finance for clean cooking, as those will link directly to primary forests in some of the countries that we live in. So yeah, thank you. I just want to also say at the end, we have a very good partnership ongoing with the UNESCAP, with MEX, and now increasingly also having discussion with others about clean Bhutan, but possibly other countries in the region, and promoting clean cooking solutions. UNCDF is partnering also with the OPEC Fund on the Climate Finance and Energy Innovation Hub together with SE4All. And that is also promoting very much a clean cooking solution agenda. So again, the challenge is how to move from the millions to the billions. And I've given maybe some hints, but I think it's very much a work in progress, something which we need to look at much more aggressively, and there's a lot of opportunity there, I think, to work on. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Vincent. Yeah, and from our side, we're very happy to be, SE4All is very happy to be working more closely with you as well. It's very interesting. The point about sort of carbon financing and going from 0 to 40 so quickly is quite, I think, compelling, and sort of points us in an interesting direction. I'm curious to understand sort of how much faster we need to go, though, in order to hit SDG 7 by 2030 and the clean cooking target there. And to also put a point on it, I agree. I think in terms of countries, perhaps wealthy countries wanting to undertake these types of transactions to earn credits back. I think that's another sort of point of interest that we can explore further. So we're going to move quickly now to the final presentation, which is shared with us virtually from Suzanne Schritzke, who is a senior research associate with Modern Energy Cooking Services. This is a pre-recorded message that we've received from Suzanne on results-based financing for clean cooking. So if we have that available, it'd be great to go straight there. Okay, great. So we're going to try and get, sorry? All good? Okay, sure. So we're going to try and get this sorted out very quickly. But I wonder as well, maybe are there any questions for Samir or Vincent before we move on, if they're willing to take them? I saw one hand in the back. Perhaps you might share with us. Yes.
Sorry. It's the great work you're trying to do. In one of the slide, you mentioned that it's roughly contributing to 50% benefit to the end consumers. I was just wondering to know like how much this translates into actual dollar terms. Is it something like $10 or $50 or $100 that carbon markets contribute to cost reduction?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, as I said earlier, at the moment the cost is US $250, which is kind of high, compared to the free access. But then in dollar terms, it comes around $125 US. But that's over the period of the project, which is with the gold standard, it's 5 years. But then you can kind of renew the project. That's it. But on top of that, there are two things, which is just a pilot, 600. But we expect it to grow with the volume. The cost is going to decrease in the future. That's one. The other one is it's an installment basis. It's 3 years, then it comes down to around US $10 per month. That's the second thing. And the third thing is we're also trying to build upon the carbon financing, the impacts with health and gender. And at the moment, we're working with clean impact bonds. With a pilot, with the gold standard methodology as well. There are gold standard has also methodologies for health and gender. So the price value on that health and gender would come around. With health, it's US $125 per year, and with gender, it's like $1.5 US per hour per year. So all of these things adds up. So it's in terms of how you structure the carbon financing together with the other financing that could happen. Yeah, thank you for giving me this question.
Thanks very much. Just wanted to check if there are any other quick questions that we might. One more. Okay, great, and then we can test the video after. Oh, perfect.
Hello, my name is Vatan Cheng from Cambodia. Actually, my question to Vincent. Thank you for presentations. Thank you for sharing about the different financing mechanism available. How can, you mentioned about private sector receivable financing, how can financing institution, like for example, we know that clean cooking is a very micro financing asset. So for private sector, look like the presentation is really focusing, accessing that. But for how can the financial institution could help and channel or assist in the financing sphere of things, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I mean, again, it's about setting up some intermediary structure, like an aggregation platform that is able to pool all the receivables into one portfolio, which then can be financed by financial institutions. But you need somebody to manage that portfolio structure or intermediary platform that can then also, ascertain the quality of the underlying receivables and go down and actually test what the likelihood of those coming in is. And so you may need also some de-risking to set up such kind of platform. And maybe a donor or public finance can put in a first loss or something to attract banks and others to come in. Over.
Thanks very much. No, we're good. That's you. Maybe can we check now and see if we have the final presentation ready from Suzanne? How are we doing?
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present on RBF today, and I hope you're having a productive session so far. My name is Dr. Susan Stritzke, and I am a Senior Research Associate for the MAX program at Loughborough University. MAX is a research to impact program, and we are operating in 13 countries. Modern energy cooking is Tier 5 clean cooking, and MAX supports innovations within that range with a special focus on electric cooking. As you know, access to clean cooking remains a huge challenge globally, and around 2.8 billion people are still cooking with polluting fuel, and the cooking sector faces a huge financing gap. So we need innovative financing models to scale up, especially modern energy cooking solutions. And results-based financing for clean and modern energy cooking solutions has become an important funding tool for the sector over the last decade. Performance-based RBF mechanisms disperse grants to private companies or service organizations based on the delivery and verification of pre-agreed results, such as the number of stoves sold. They aim to encourage organizations to carry out activities outside their usual business, for example, expanding into underserved areas or venturing into new technologies. So RBF has the potential to catalyze the enhanced uptake of new or improved technologies in challenging or early stage markets. The clean cooking market has changed substantially over the last decade. So we see a lot of innovation in terms of technology and business models, as well as a diversification of stakeholders and market actors. And the focus of RBF in parallel is advancing from predominantly supporting improved biomass cook stoves to greater incorporation of modern energy cooking solutions, including e-cooking. In the next few slides, I'm going to present an overview of the latest trends in RBF programming, and I will also reflect on some of the key learning lessons from recent RBF programs. So my insights are largely derived from research that MAX has performed over the last few years in collaboration with our partners, such as the Clean Cooking Alliance and Energy for Impact. So what is RBF programming and what are the key elements? They are presented in this slide, and one of the key principles of RBF versus grant funding is that the financial risk of non-performance rests with the service or product supplier rather than the donor. So the donor and the supplier agree a price for the service, including a risk premium, and if the results are not realized, the supplier does not get paid. The donor protects against underperformance through strong program design, so that's a key issue here, robust due diligence during supplier selection, and dynamic monitoring during implementation. So while the RBF approach has obvious advantages, it also creates challenges for the RBF program managers and donors, as well as the companies involved. So we identified like 3 key challenges. So the first one is because the project implementer is taking more financial risk, they will require higher incentives per unit of output to cover that risk. So assuming the budget for the RBF is fixed, the RBF will be able to support fewer projects for the same level of subsidies than if the subsidies were paid upfront. And secondly, in terms of reputational risk, so while an RBF reduces the financial risk for the donor, they are still left with some reputational risk of non-performance and other risks like force majeure events or potential fraud. So we have seen that during the COVID pandemic that really affected a lot of RBF programs, made them more expensive and longer lasting. And thirdly, local clean cooking companies are often operating in financially challenging markets with high interest rates and currency fluctuations, and it's often challenging for them to acquire the required upfront financing. And that can disadvantage especially local players and smaller companies. So that needs to be taken into account when designing an RBF. In a joint collaboration with CCA and Max-based research, which we published last year on RBF design principles, we found that there are currently around 12 RBF programs for clean cooking that have either been recently concluded or are still running, covering a wider range of technologies and objectives, as you can see in this slide. And while output-based programs that focus mainly on the number of stoves sold are still dominating, outcome-based targets such as health and gender are becoming increasingly important. So today, however, the only approach that is piloting the incorporation of health and gender co-benefits is the Clean Impact Bond, which has been developed by Cardano Development. And the project is currently piloted with Systema Bio in Kenya on biogas clean cooking. And the first evaluation that has recently been published shows really substantial benefits with regard to the reduction of household air pollution, hence positive health impacts, and increased value time for women. So what are the key elements and the trends we found so far? So as I mentioned, RBF programming is still very much output-based instead of outcome-based. We have a few elements such as selling stoves to underserved areas or predominantly serving poorer population, but they are still very much in an early stage, and they are more side effects than a major focus of the RBF. In terms of eligibility, the program defines which technologies, geographies, and types of suppliers are eligible to participate. And while most clean cooking RBF programs continue to be technology neutral, there is a clear trend towards supporting higher tier, more efficient technologies, and in some cases, such as the MCFA program in Southern Africa, are excluding lowest tier or lower tier biomass improved cook stoves. In terms of the bidding mechanism, we saw that RBF programs have traditionally adopted a fixed incentive per stove of up to 50% of the price of the stove. It also depends a little bit on the technology that is supported. But many programs now require companies to bid through reverse auctions to reduce the subsidies per unit of output. And while reverse auctions may result in financial savings for the donor, they can also force the price too low for successful delivery by the winning supplier. So larger supplier may gain here an unfair advantage through the greater ability to maximize their scaling and to source stoves. So that is always a bit of a decision by the program developer how the approach could be designed. Shall we support smaller scale companies, or should we support larger scale companies? But if it's done correctly, the bid price can be used as an indicator for the level of market development and act as a future benchmark for pricing under normal market conditions. In terms of the incentive structures, we saw that most RBF programs used a tier structure with greater incentives for more highly valued outcomes. So these include higher tier technologies or sales in underserved areas, as I mentioned before, to lower income groups, or for cooking as a productive use. Some programs also offer catalytic grants to cover the upfront cost of market setup and make it easier for companies to raise capital, and development activities before the RBF cycle begins in type of an innovation grant or technical assistant. In terms of program management, the donors need to decide whether the RBF should be managed by a public body, a social enterprise, or a mix of the two. While public body engagement ensures a certain level of political buy-in, it also bears the risk of delays and increased complexity of an RBF approach over a normal grant program, which we have seen in a few cases here. Monitoring, reporting, and verification can be costly and resource intensive, and the majority of MRV processes for clean cooking RBFs are still based on manual verification, such as phone calls, but we see a greater trend towards digital verification. So in the common RBF objectives, we have seen that Output-based targets such as increased uptake or sales are still dominating, but this landscape is changing, and carbon finance also becomes a part of these RBFs. And we will probably see a change in these programs over the next month and year. So this will look much different, I suppose, in 2024. So here's a little case study of the East Asia and Pacific Clean Stove Initiative. I don't want to go too much into detail here, as you can read the presentation later, and there's also the Design Principles report where I have taken this from. This was focused on improved biomass cookstoves, biogas, LPG and e-cooking. So it was technology agnostic, more or less, and took place, or is still taking place, in 4 Asian countries. What we saw here is that the RBF could contribute significantly to innovation and technological development. There has been significant market scale up in certain markets, which even led to a enhanced RBF program in China, and the development of a national clean cooking plan in Mongolia. So what we see here is that national support is key for RBF programming, and political buy-in definitely enhances the impacts. If we connect with other partners like health partners or other private sector entities or even NGOs can really help to achieve scales. And the subsidies need to be well targeted. So if you want to reach the poorest populations, the subsidies will be necessary. Just applying market mechanisms won't be successful. Our evaluation of multiple RBF programs revealed 3 key insights on design principles, which should be taken into account when you develop an RBF. So here's a short overview, and more detail can be found in our report, which has been published by CCA and Max. So the first one is partnerships. So RBF programs have a better chance of being effective when they involve partnerships with providers of capital or technical assistance, with companies ready to scale, and with other partners that can fill roles in clean cooking supply chains which are not filled by RBF recipients. It should also be taken into account what happens after the RBF. So there is a post-deployment partnership, because RBF programs will need to form longer-term alliances with off-takers and find sources of finance that RBF companies can graduate to when the RBF program ends. In terms of verification, this is a key element of RBF. And there are certain trade-offs inherent in a process that needs to balance speed, quality, and cost. Most RBFs are taking longer to verify payments, which causes delays in the disbursements of funds, and in turn creates problems for the companies involved because they have to pre-finance everything. Manual verification, like via the phone or on-site service, are also costly and not always accurate. It always depends on the subjective end-user feedback. Digital technology can really help to streamline timelines for monitoring, and results verification are currently a hot topic and under development for many technologies. And thirdly, RBF program objectives should be kept simple. Program designers want to create certain programs that have additionality, so they want to create positive impacts that could not have happened without the existence of the program. But difficulties can arise when different objectives pertaining to the target markets, companies, and technologies are brought together under the same program, especially when you combine output and outcome-based targets. So RBFs stand the best chance of achieving their core objectives when they are designed to help mature companies to scale faster. So our research revealed 9 overall learning lessons which need to be taken into account when preparing an RBF program. So the first one is affordability, which is valid for many programs. So consumers must be able and willing to pay for the stoves and the fuel costs. Secondly, the clean cooking technologies that are supported through the RBF must be competitive against substitute fuels, which is always a problem when you work against lower tier ICS and firewood that has been collected for free. Consumers must be aware of the clean cooking technologies on offer, so it's always helpful to develop a consumer awareness program in conjunction with an RBF. The technologies must be consumer friendly and easy to use. And there must be a functioning supply chain for the stoves or the fuel and a certain after-sale service, especially for higher tier, more technologically advanced technologies. The infrastructure for modern fuel solutions should already exist, so there should be a fuel distribution network and certain retail outlets where consumers can purchase the fuel. There must be an attractive policy environment for clean cooking and appropriate fiscal incentives, like VAT exemptions or lowered import tariffs. End-user financing for the appliances should be available, especially when targeting poorer communities. And RBF development and implementation should be based on the availability and evaluation of sufficient data with regard to the clean cooking and wider energy market, consumers and companies. So data is key here. So according to these learning lessons, our call to action includes 5 points that are listed on this slide. I don't want to go through in more detail, but they establish important preconditions for a successful RBF. So what comes next? The presentation by my colleague Samir on carbon financing illustrates the potential for these mechanisms to further scale modern energy cooking. And while I don't want to go too much into detail here, and as mentioned previously, climate and other impact financing such as health and gender can play an increasing role within RBF programming to provide post-RBF financing and support the long-term take-up of the supported technologies. These mechanisms benefit hugely from the technological advancements that we see in the sector and the innovation shown by many clean cooking companies such as ATEC, who are piloting the metered methodology right now, or Sistema Bio, who are piloting the Clean Impact Bond, among many others. And it's great to see these efforts being made. So I want to conclude my presentation at this point. There would be much more to say about RBF as it is a complex topic, and I recommend the resources on this slide for a deeper dive. Thank you very much for listening, and I wish you a productive conference.
So yes, a big thanks to Suzanne for taking the time to make the pre-recorded message. I think possibly, I don't want to put Samir on the spot as well, but I think if you have any questions or are interested in learning things further, maybe get in touch with Samir after the session, who may be able to put you in touch with Suzanne. So we're about 10 minutes over, so I'm going to very quickly wrap up. I think I wanted to try and summarize sort of 3 key takeaways that I've heard here. The first one, for me at least, was that the benefits of clean cooking are immense, but the barriers to impact are incredibly diverse. We heard in the opening about sort of the social benefits and sort of the social benefits that can come from clean cooking. And here in particular, I want to stress, I think, the role that clean cooking can play in delivering gender equality. I think, we heard about that in a few presentations, but I think, we know that it's both a social impact and an economic impact to enable women to be more involved in economic activity in particular, and that can create value for countries, not just from a social side, but from an economic side as well. And then, of course, there's the climate piece, and I think we've heard a lot about carbon financing and that, but I think the climate impact of a lack of access to clean cooking solutions globally is quite significant and perhaps underestimated, and something that needs further attention in the future. The second takeaway for me is that clean cooking is on the policy agenda. It's not an orphan anymore. We heard from a number of countries today about sort of how they are prioritizing clean cooking in their planning frameworks, and that there's an opportunity, highlighted through my presentation at least, that there's an opportunity to integrate clean cooking planning with energy access planning. And we need, I guess, better data. I think data is incredibly important and a next step to create investment-ready markets. So I think that's another one. So fundamentally, sort of demand is there. We're seeing countries make priorities. We need to back that up with data as well as capacity building. And then on the last point, I think on finance, takeaway for me is that there's lots of innovation and there's lots of potential, but we need to work quickly, in particular, to get finance moving at the rate that we need to achieve SDG 7 by 2030. Carbon financing, there's a lot of potential, particularly for e-cooking, as well as linking to Article 6 and private carbon markets. There's a need to support SMEs for e-cooking and financing and getting them access to finance for carbon credits. We heard a little bit from Bhutan and Nepal on Article 6 transactions and potential linkages to clean cooking, and I think that's a really important area to explore. Local collaboration is another really important element on channeling finance to frontier markets, so both with local banks and, of course, local SMEs. And I think, yeah, and the last one on RBF, it's making important advances, particularly on e-cooking. So, you know, with that, I think we can wrap the session up. I want to thank you for your attention and for our slight going over time here, but it's much appreciated. I want to thank in particular our speakers who came and shared with us the insights today. On SE for All's behalf, I want to thank the ADB for their partnership in organizing this session. And we look forward to future collaboration with you. Also to MEX, Modern Energy Cooking Services, UNSCAP, and UNCDF for their support in organizing this session. Like to, last but not least, I'd like to thank the ASF organizers and the technical team for supporting us here today through a good long session. And I hope that this has been informative. I know it has been for me. And I hope that it has provided you with some insights and some knowledge in terms of how to take this agenda forward, both internationally and where you work in your country. So thank you on behalf of SE for All, and we'll look forward to future conversations and the remainder of the ASF agenda. Thank you. Thank you so much.